turnout. Try to keep it crisp if we possibly can, but we're not gonna rush it either, so, this meeting is adjourned. No,
Okay, the one we went over this morning, is it updated? Okay, I figured.
Okay, that's all. It is at this time 6 o'clock, and I will call this city council work session to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Linnea,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Green,
Here.
Mayor Lobby,
Here.
Councilmember Trump,
Here.
Councilmember Phil, Councilmember Grant, absent Councilmember Wilson.
Here.
Okay, is there anything anybody would like to add to this agenda? Please feel welcome to say no.
Negative. No.
Thank you. Are there any public comments about items not on the agenda? Anybody would like to talk about anything in the public? Cisco, please.
Advocate for the childcare fund. Should I do that now or when it's on?
Let's wait until we're into that topic, and if you raise your hand, then you can speak at that time.
Okay.
Okay. Any other public comments? Anybody on Zoom? Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll hear from the Main Street organization about their budget requests for 2024.
Hey.
Page 6.
Page 6.
Everybody, I'm Nancy Lee, the Main Street Program, and with me, we have our president, Amy Hall. We are here tonight, we're gonna tag team a little bit and present to you, our 2024 annual budget reviews. So, we have, provided the report here. We're not gonna go through all of the items, here on the report. But we do want to kind of point out a few things. Do you want to go by? Yeah. That's what I think so. Okay, I can't believe we are here. 3 years, I think this is our third time with this group coming up, and each year we're just so grateful. We're so grateful for your investment, and we've come a long way. And this report here kind of outlines what that growth looks like. So we're excited tonight. So, aside from our thanks, we do want to point out a couple things in retrospect in 2023, and then really get focused on our 2024 goals. But this year was, as you know, another transition year for the Main Street program. So fourth transition, and we really, though, luckily it wasn't much of a, as far as programming year, we did well. We still delivered on all of our our goals that were set forth in our strategic plan. And I think that, despite those transitions, I think that, this annual year has gone really well, despite that. So a couple things on page 2. I do want to, I won't kind of read everything in here, but I do want to point out a couple things about kind of the impact that we've had over the last 3 years, not just in 2023, but collectively. And this is because of your investment. Really. So I really think it's important that you guys understand what that means financially and to our overall economic future. So over the past 3 years, we've received several grant funding mechanisms in excess of $500,000, and that does not include the Tabor Opera House. So that translates to 2.5 times typically of the economic investment. So those are the kind of things that they were infinite assets. That we can continue to support. Let's see, from our Main Street Open for Business grant to the CDOT revitalization grant, and one thing I do like to point out with those is additional impact is, being an accredited Main Street community, both nationally and state, really does provide and prioritize OEDIT and DOLA funding mechanisms. So, it's really, this is a really strong program. And I do want to say that, we are getting some national attention now, and our program is, it is growing, and we really, really need this continued investment. So with that, progress. right? So we want to talk about that a little bit. So let's see, if we go to page 10. Last year, John was so gracious to help us through the transition, and we actually became our own 501c3 sort of. And that's a really good path for our Main Street community. And so we appointed a new president, and then amongst her resignation, it was Katie Scott from the bank. She got an amazing promotion. So, and Amy was on our original founding board. So she stepped up to the plate. And again, all about performing and delivering on our strategic plan and our goals. We continue to shepherd the public restroom facility with all of your assistance, obviously. But that brought in, you know, that's making a mark on our legacy, right? As a group. So that we're really proud of that. And also marketing and communications, as you know, continues to, you know, evolve. We have a long way to go. It's a pretty grassroots effort, as you know, but it is a way to communicate with our business community. So I think that's really important. So, any questions so far?
Yeah, you referred to a couple of grants and you referred to them by their grant doors, but that was, I'd like to clarify, one was for the restoration of the Herald Democrat building,
Yes.
and one was for the building of the restroom at the visitor center.
Correct.
Those were both grants that came from Main Street.
Those, and there, yes.
I don't think we got a copy of that.
Actually, there's an extra copy here. I just printed one out this evening, so
I don't think. I got it on
Hannah
my
got it,
email.
but I think Hannah got
I
it
didn't
like
get
at
it.
9 something this morning.
She did.
We
She
didn't get
got
it
this
on our
morning. You can
email.
get
Okay,
it all this.
that's too bad.
Sorry.
Just when you're referring to things, we didn't get a copy.
I'm
of
so
it.
sorry.
And I've read through this, so you guys could share one
Here,
there.
I am so sorry, you guys. I
No,
thought you
that's-
guys I would have come equipped with copies. I apologize.
Got some pages here, and we also have it up on the TV.
Yeah.
Good. Here's another one too. I don't need the rest of the presentation. It actually distracts me.
Right.
Here's
I don't
some
wanna see
budget requests. This is probably something that you'll
Yeah,
look at right here. I do want to kind of point this out a little bit, and we'll talk about that. Amy's gonna have some questions about that as well.
If the folks have their laptops here, Hannah, do you just mind forwarding that to?
Yeah, I'm
Let them know.
Yeah, I think the visual too was pretty good. You know, and I will,
Well,
thank you. Will do well. Okay, on page 10, Hannah is there. This is the actual annual work plan that was created this year. It's a 3-year multi-strategic plan. So when you ask what our 2024 goals are, you know, Amy's gonna talk to a little bit about some of the evolution of the events that we've either assumed, taken on, groomed because no one else was doing it. And it was appropriate, right? It was appropriate, it was in our lane, and it made sense. And executing on those additional things and additional responsibilities on behalf of the community takes time and money. So, in 2024, we will execute year 2 of our 3-year strategic plan. On page 10, you'll see a detail of those goals. And I do want to point out, this, you know, may not seem like a big deal, but it is. And I'll tell you why, because this is going to ensure the program's sustainability going forward. And, you know, honestly, you know, the Leadville Main Street program is an economic tool. It is the state level and at the national level. This is, you know, protecting our overall resiliency. And, you know, I put this in my notes because I was like, wow, that sounded really good. That we need to create an economy that our children are going to be able to work in and live in and be in. So, you know, that's what we should stay focused on. And so with that, I know that I apologize, you guys haven't had a chance to see the actual budget numbers. I know that you're not making actual decisions tonight, so, you know, that'll be okay, but we're here to answer any questions tonight you have. And Amy's gonna talk about everything I forgot to talk about. And then we'll talk about what the budget request looks like, why the investment is important, and then get into any details about any of the programming that you might have any questions about.
I've got one question before we move on about grants, and I understand the grants that we've had in the past, and I think that's a great return on investment. Do you anticipate opportunity for additional grants in 2024, and does Main Street have the bandwidth to jump on those opportunities?
That's a really good question, and I'm glad you asked it. I probably should have put that in the report, and I do want to say it's kind of been our, it was intentional. This first year of transition through the community fund that, and traditionally, you know, the Main Street doesn't like to have its hand out. I mean, that's kind of been our kind of MO, you know, unspoken, you know, but I think that, you know, after 3 years of, you know, rolling out a programming year and strategic fund, I think we're ready. I think we've proven ourselves as a good investment for, you know, for tourism money, for possibly climax, for the community fund, for, you know, other mechanisms that we can bolster our line item, because there is one thing that, you know, we, and a lot of that has to do with transitions, right? Is those transitions, you have to kind of start over each time, and that's creating more solid pathways to have alternative funding mechanisms. And we do realize, all of you, really, and we take it really seriously that you continue to make this investment year after year. We know it seems like a lot of money, but if you really think about the return on investment and the fact that these are really important long-term economic development strategies that no one else is doing, is really a no-brainer to me. So, but you know, I think that we've demonstrated our value here, and I think that there's a lot more we can do. I mean, I think we're just getting started, right? So, with, you know, some more support, bear with us as we continue to evolve through our strategies. But I will tell you that, you know, we are looked up to, you know, through our peers. And you know, we want to continue to be the example. And sometimes, you know, we haven't always had a chance to be. So we're really proud of that. So with all that said, Amy, why don't you go over things?
Yeah, I just made a couple notes that I wanted to share with you guys, and they're not in your packet. I'm sorry, I didn't get information to Nancy right away, but I wanted to talk just a little bit about some of our partnerships and some of that have happened over this year. And not just this year, like Nancy was saying, we've got a little bit of track record here in Leadville, but I am so proud of the impact that we've made downtown, not only for our locals with doing some activities and events that are during shoulder season, so they're just for our Leadvilleans. We've also been able to do some fun things during tourist season, and we make a welcoming downtown with making sure that the chains and the balusters and the light posts are painted, having comfortable benches and things like that. But beyond those things, we've been so fortunate to get to partner and work right next to C4 with community cleanup, and that is going to continue year after year event that continues to grow. When the people of 7th Street said, we're a little bit tired, we don't want to do Trick or Treat Street anymore, we need some help, we said, hey, that fits in, we could do that. And not only did we just say, well, we'll be Lone Rangers, but we came to you guys and said, hey, we need some help. We went to the rec department and said, this seems like something that could be great for the youth and the children, families of parents of Leadville. And they said, yeah, let's do that. So that's been a really cool partnership. It's brought a lot of folks. We continue to work with the Tabor Opera House on activities, fundraising events, and that's a really cool partnership. When the Chamber was in a time where they were needing some to pass off shop small, maybe see that guy, we said, hey, that's too important for downtown Leadville. That means too much to the downtown businesses. And so Main Street said, we will take on shop small. And we've been doing that now successfully. That was just last weekend. And you know, so many times we get people saying, thank you, this really helps us over this little slow home. And now, again, when an organization, a group was saying, we're a little bit tired, Creative Lights is getting a little bit too much, Main Street said, all right, hey, we'll jump in and we'll do Parade of Lights now, which is this Friday, and I hope to see you there. So please come out. So yeah, we do awesome things, and that sounds a little boastful, but I know that we do. Lights Park, the music at Lights Park is something I'm really proud this year, and I'm gonna tell you guys, this is something I wanted to see for years, and it's not about the music. I've been wanting to see that, but I want to tell you that we strategically tried to find a band that would be known by our Latin community. That's what we wanted. And so we found a whole band and they came and they were awesome and we had a great turnout from our Latin community. And I had one of the leaders in our Latin community come up to me and say, if this is the kind of band and the kind of activities that Main Street does, you will not have a problem making our Latin community feel safe and welcome and invited downtown. And not only did she say that, she said, I want to partner with you next year and I want to do something bigger and better. And so we're seeing that. We also have another person who's come to us and they want to do a big thing this winter and they said, we see that Main Street knows what they're doing and we want to partner with you. You guys are doing this in the right way. So there's a lot of things that you guys see on your spreadsheets. But what I think is maybe not known or not the case in every national Main Street but is here in Leadville Main Street is that I think we have a really awesome way of partnering and a really great way of building relationships in our community. And I think that's really a valuable thing when we're able to not just be lone rangers out there, but to work with other community members. And then as Nancy said, kind of becoming leaders where people are coming to us and saying, hey, I want to work with you guys. Can you guys show me how to do this? Can you partner with me on that? So that's something that I'm really proud of for Leadville Main Street is building relationships with other orgs, with the businesses downtown, with community members. And I think that that's a really special thing in a small town and an important and needed thing. So that was just my little tag line that I wanted to say.
so much more. Thank you for that. We'll come to numbers a little bit. So last year, you guys invested $60,000 into the program. 50,000 of that was programmatic, 10,000 of that was for the administration of watering the flowers. And we'll talk about the room about that. It's not in the Main Street community's purview to water the flowers. It's just, we're too small for the liability and really the function of public works. I've talked to national partners, I've talked to state partners, I've talked to other peers in my capacity, and it's just not something that Main Street really has that it's not, it's just not safe and it's just not the right thing to do. So we really cannot do that. We'll still, and I want to remind everybody, the $100 program is, it's not an easy thing to pull off. You have to sell the sponsorships, you have to know the businesses, you have to get this, I mean, it's quite the process. Hopefully, everybody realizes that, but, this year, the goal really, in the increase in numbers, and I love some of the graphs here that show the trajectory of the overall growth of the program, which I think is really important. You have to remember last year when we were planning these things, we had myself and a full-time assistant rolling out these things. So, we had to, we still pulled it off, but, we have to kind of be more realistic kind of in how we're planning things in the future based on that. So as far as the ask is concerned, and this is the one thing we want to point out, I've been in the role for 3 years now. This will be my 4th time around the sun doing these events, which is amazing. I'm very proud of that and thankful for all of you and the team. But there's going to come a day when I'm going to grow my business and, someone else will have to take over this role. And I want to make sure that we have enough resources financially and otherwise to support a new person coming in and taking my place. So that is really important. And I know that, you've seen the burden of the investment of our Main Street program, which by the way, is not uncommon, but it is time for us to gain our wings and fly and start bringing in some other funding mechanisms, which we are 100% confident we'll be able to focus on in 2024.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Are there any questions?
I've got one more, and Amy, maybe it's for you because you were talking about partnerships, but has Main Street's been involved with the Urban Renewal Authority at all? It seems like such a natural partnership because Main Streets is trying to manage what our Harrison Avenue looks like, and ultimately the Urban Renewal Authority will too.
That's not the folks from the Urban Renewal Authority
Yeah.
at all.
So you don't see a partnership there at all?
It's possible you can build in a partnership. For instance, URAs can vote, and this is something maybe we'll talk about in the URA meeting. Like the URA in Denver dedicates 1% of its funds to public art, as an example.
Mhm.
And it also has a certain amount to homelessness. Yeah, they do a couple things like that. They're small pieces of the URA, but I've never heard of a URA, and I've been to a bunch of seminars of involving itself with the downtown program.
Technically, we don't invest in public infrastructure. Because the idea is to get property taxes up as a return. So public infrastructure or a justice center, swimming pool don't pay back to the URA.
Yeah, URA actually is really important to that downtown Lake Leadville, and it could be it's not a thing that we're utilizing yet, but we will.
Yeah, if we had what's called a DDA, a Downtown Development Association, that would be a completely different functionality, but that would be the businesses taxing themselves in order to build that organization. They might partner with Main Street, but we.
I thought
don't
the
have that.
URA though helped direct design and what the design of the downtown core is.
Absolutely.
No, okay, it's all about the tax increment.
Well,
Okay.
And
that's part of it, but we can get into that in the URA meeting.
Okay, very good.
It has a lot of potential functionality, just nothing that's been realized as of yet.
Right. Okay, very good.
Thank you, guys. I do have a question. It's something that I've been involved in that conversation. You had put together, some funding for the manager, the director of the Main Street. And can you explain to us on what basis that number, how did you derive that number? I think you were working in person on that.
Yeah, well, we, for one, tried to go up a tiny bit from last year, because everything in town costs a little bit more. I'm not sure, I'm not sure I'm answering you quite how you want
That's
to
okay.
there.
It's however you feel comfortable.
And yeah, so we, as Nancy was saying, we want to, maintain, retain her as long as possible. And then be in a position to bring somebody else in when, as she said, the time comes for her to expand her store. And we're just wanting to be able to offer something that would attract a great manager for us when that time comes and retain the great manager that we do have for now.
Okay, thank you.
And just so you know, most, and I'm happy to put together, I've done this before, I'm happy to do it again, too, just to kind of brush up on some more kind of timely and real-time information, but, we can put together, I mean, if I, emailed you some salary comparisons to my counterparts, I mean, we need to dig deep and make the investments, we really do, and it's not for Nancy, okay, I've already done it, I'm 3 years in, one day I'm gonna be out, so this is for the next person, make sure we have the right person to carry the torch.
Okay. Any other questions for Nancy or Amy?
I just have one quick question. So we funded at $60,000 last year. And we funded, I believe, $8,000. So 8,000 of that 60 was for the watering, to hire somebody for watering. And so I agree that the city should take that back on. So that's now an expense the city's gonna be carrying, and we have a person on board now who can do that. But so if you subtract out that money that we added additionally from last year, that leaves 52,000, and you're asking for 65 this year.
So a couple of things, and I'm not an expert on budgets, but a couple of things that as a board we decided. One is we have not counted the costs for all of our activities and events, and board members and Nancy have sometimes had to pitch in on those. And so we said, oh, we need to make sure, like, oh, wait, we need cups for the parade lights. Oh, we need, so there's small things, but there are things that we weren't always counting in. So that's one thing. The second thing is we realized that I think COVID kind of opened a lot of our eyes to this. And then, yeah, again, coming up and like, oh, we don't know where the money is we needed a contingency plan. We don't have any money that we roll over from year to year. We don't have like any emergency or savings, or if something goes awry or amiss. And so as we've brought on more board members who actually have more board member board experience, that was something that they were like, hey, you were setting yourself up for some issues, and so part of that is that we are just feeling like we need to have, what we use the word contingency fund, so emergency savings, whatever the right term is, that we just feel that we've got to start building that. Also, as we've been kind of thinking about, Nancy, at some point moving on, we might have a kind of a dual manager for a short time, where we would want Nancy to be able to stay on and do some training for our next person. And so that's, I was like, Kirsten, where do I put this? And she's like, let's contingency fund, like if you need, because I'm trying to look forward, I'm trying to look ahead of what could be happening, as Nancy's little business is going gangbusters over there. That, yeah, we might need to have some training budget as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that might be really helpful as we crunch some of the numbers is if you could do a 2023 compared to 2024. So our budget,
It's on,
It's on page
It's on this
12.
one. Yeah.
It's
Page 12.
on this.
Okay.
perfect.
It's sent me in the email. We say,
We need to wrap up, so we can get on with this, but, any last questions for, I'm gonna answer any.
I was just gonna say one more thing that, Lori, that Aaron reminded me of, and that was part of that, not always thinking ahead and not, because we're not strong budget people, is like, when we had to come to you the last 2 years and ask for money for candy. So like, we're trying, like, in October, like, oops, we need more money, we're also trying to stop doing that. So
those numbers are built.
putting, like, we're building all of that in, and you can see, we've never really broken down, like, what does community cleanup cost us? What does, Crystal Carnival cost us, like, we haven't broken those down, and so this year we did try to say that, and like, oh, yeah, we have to spend like almost $1,000 on candy every year, that needs to be in this budget, and so, to me, this is like, yes, it's more money, because I think it's a more realistic budget of like what we actually end up spending, and we're trying to say managers and board members shouldn't have to be like, oh, I'll go buy candy, I'll go buy, whatever it is, so I don't think you're supposed to say this, but I don't think our budget last year was like super great and we spent too much money. So we need more money.
Yeah, and keep in mind, like she eloquently overviewed, we've been assuming these things and growing these things. So we're growing into, these growing pains, right? On how we approach these things. Who knew that these things were going to cost a lot of money? We did do really well though, in terms of getting sponsorships, and we did get a lot of core member and staff donations, but be correct. When we need that, and that's what that is for. So I think that'll go a long way, so you're not nickel and dime, just don't feel that way.
We also had like a couple of cool opportunities come up this last year that some of them we made happen, but it's Skin of our teeth. Some of them we couldn't make happen because we didn't have money. And we're seeing some of those things, same thing, like I said, we've got people coming to us saying, hey, we'd like to partner with you, we'd like to do this. And we're going to have some money. So yes, contingency.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate your support.
All right, next up, we have the city hall budget.
Okay, so that is,
There's 5 and 6.
yeah, okay. So, having a couple items in the city hall budget that were some of the bigger items. So we added convention center maintenance. If you look at line 6215. That's the boiler that when we purchased the convention center, we knew it was a new boiler, but it wasn't properly winterized, so it has cracked. So this is the estimated cost for replacement. It's possible that we could get it repaired for less, but budgets are budgets, and so it's always better to come in under budget. We also put in building maintenance, $50,000. I'm gonna tell you, I really hope that is enough. But the mayor jinxed us twice today, so I don't
I'll
really.
do it a third time, I don't care.
We have some deferred maintenance at City Hall. We have, our archives, we have some files downstairs, which are on the second shelf of a shelving system because the basement floods every spring. So we need to look at putting some type of a drainage system, French drain in, on the north side of the building so that we don't have flooding in the basement. The other issue is, just deferred maintenance over time, things that go wrong. The other thing that I was joking about, but not joking, so y'all may remember last year, the heat went out in the building. And, Mayor worked his magic on the boiler. Our new boiler is from when? The 60s? 30s?
I have no clue.
We don't know. The old boiler's from like 1904, which has been disconnected. We did get an estimate on a new boiler and it is not in here. And it is not in here because the estimate was $120,000. We are, we just don't know, it's been puttering along. It could conk out tomorrow. So what I'm gonna say is this is money that we put in there. It could go over budget if the boiler goes kaput. And if it does,
Which is not.
which if it does, you all now know whose fault it is. Okay. Let's see, a couple other things that I was gonna highlight. Oh, did you no, we left that in the article. Okay. Legal expenses, I think we'll be on track for that. That's line 6301. We have new outside counsel. They're a little more expensive, but I'm gonna tell you that we are using them less for word processing, where Christiana used to help us draft resolutions and draft staff reports. We are doing more of that in-house and having what the legal services should do is just true review ordinances, preparing resolutions that we don't have a template of, those types of things. So while they're slightly more expensive, we are using them for their intended purpose. So we are hoping that we hit about $120,000.
We've also split out some legals to the fire department. There's $6,000 in there, and to planning, there were $14,000 in theirs for their own legal needs.
And as you've heard our planning director talk about, there are a lot of legal issues in planning. Some of it we can bill back to entities other than the city, but some of it we end up paying for ourselves. The other, I think we have here, line 6339, 809 Spruce Utilities. We also added the property management company to that. So that's Amy, who's helping us manage the property, which is fantastic because we have more new tenants in the property and it's nice not having the city be in the position of collecting rents and, handling routine maintenance. So, let's see.
We also increased on 6302 the audit.
Oh, right.
It costs more, so we had a $40,000. It's actually 44 is the projection for 2024.
And then you'll notice the last line, 6525, economic development. Don't worry, it's not that we don't have economic development. The mayor had to remind me this morning, we did put that in the contingency last year, so you'll see that in the contingency line. Peak performance, Dan Rabinowitz is our computer person, I told us what kind of things we need for 2023. Obviously, there's a lot of upgrades that our technology needs, but we've been consulting with Tim on that. And I do think where did we have you add the website? Was that professional?
It was professional service thing. We had $10,000 for the website.
Yeah, I'm
Should be
sorry.
in the notes.
It's in the notes, but the notes get cut off. So that's line 6303. The reason I'm flagging that, $10,000 is per state law, we have to have our website ADA accessible by the summer of 2024. As you know, we've been working on our website since I've gotten here and it is substantially improved, but it still could be a lot better. We could offer a lot more things. And what I would also like to do, and the reason we put 10,000 is, I'd like to also create an intranet so that the city employees can access the employee handbook, standard forms. We're gonna try and convert the employees to doing their own payroll, so they would have access to Excel. So there would be an intranet where the employees only have access and they could go in and, look at their pay stubs or their W-2s or look at what their health benefit election forms are. It would be mind blowing to have that information available. It would also, you know, as you've heard over the years, Donna was overworked, and part of it was every single person who needed to know something would go to Donna. Oh, I wanna find out what my health benefit is. Oh, I wanna find out what my last pay stub said. And so Donna constantly had interruptions, and so I think that would make us more efficient. So that is a big item for us. We,
I'd like to remind everybody, the last one there, the capital purchase, the reason we did that, instead of putting them, for instance, our share of the type 1 fire engine, the county paid their share up front. And so we had to finance our share, which was fine. We were glad to do that over 5 years, but we couldn't put it in the fire budget because then we would be paid 70% of our share. So we had to put it in this line item.
and those are biggies, as you kind of remember, I had some of these things and goals for, City Hall's budget for the year. We were trying to get some of these things picked off our list, and it would be fantastic, if we could. So the other one you can see in line 6905 on page 6, the operating contingency, potentially partnering with the Lake County Community Fund on a grant writer for 10,000.
Well, I also spent, I
Where
reduced
is
the economic development by 10,000. I was looking for money, but also that has an additional 20,000 in there for true contingent. You know, which just gives us the ability to deal with issues that come up during the year, which we've done this year. We probably may have overdone it a bit this year, but I know.
There's still money left
What that?
in operating contingency.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Right, and so
There may not be. but
we're gonna talk
we'll
about
talk
that.
What have you been doing?
Well, so one of the other things you'll notice, on line 6906, we've saved some of the big things to talk about. The external pressures on this budget from outside requests has been enormous. So if you look at our $6 million budget, we have almost over $600,000 in external requests that we did not have in prior years. So what we're talking about is you look at this contingency, it's transit authority, but it's not, we don't really have authority. It's just the transit partnership that we have with the county. So we committed to that by resolution, $83,411. We have the E911 costs, and then we have the request from the regional housing authority. So you put all those together, and that's a huge amount of pressure on our budget that we hadn't had previously. And
And this line item has $300,000 for the regional housing authority. And I was assured today by Tim and by Christian that they are on track to need that money as a match.
Yes.
So I was agonizing over what to do with that, but
Well, do we still have $57,000 in our funding?
in what funding?
ARPA,
Mhm.
we should have more than that.
We should
It says 57,000.
Yeah,
that can't be.
we will double
We
check on that.
probably have closer to $400,000 in our funding sitting here.
What are we doing with that?
No, because we haven't used, anyway.
Is there a deadline to spend?
Yes, in fact, I'm glad you asked. I asked that question today
December of 2024,
to commit it.
committed, and
To
then,
commit it.
spend it, 2026.
So
Well,
what,
isn't housing something that we could spend it on?
it's possible. Look, for instance, my calculation, my last calculation, it's been a while, so I don't know what it is now. Was we had 209, after all other ARPA expenses had been accounted for, we were gonna have $219,000 left. And of course, that was the money we had talked about buying that lot at phase 2 of the rail yard.
Oh, right.
So that was gonna be the rest of that money. Now, if we change our mind, we can change our mind. I don't know. I'm just saying that was our thinking at the time.
And it's, I can pull up the calculations we did. So remember, we used some of that money for the employee retention program. I can go back and look at the calculations that we did to see how much would be left after that, because we'll tell, the mayor and I did some and he's offered to do some numbers crunching, we will have at least that amount left back from those calculations, because we haven't spent any of the ARPA money since you spent it on that. We do have some employees who didn't stay with the city. One employee who left like 2 days before the retention bonus, so I don't, anyway, that doesn't make any sense to me, but. So we have some, and we're gonna come to you with a proposal to fill in the gap for those people who, remember when we passed that program, we said, well, there could be people who come on board and stay with us. And we'll evaluate that later. What we're gonna do is come to you with that, but that's gonna be a small amount of money, maybe $5,000, maybe.
I think 6,500, but I'll make that calculation first thing in the morning. I have everything I need right now.
So we should, and we should double check these numbers, because I think whatever the numbers Donna came up with last time around should be pretty on track
Okay,
with the, employees that we're gonna fill in the gap with versus the employees who didn't get the retention. We should be right at almost at or below the budget for that program.
You may want to have a future conversation, not you and I, but the rest of them. About the residual from the ARPA funds, and is that best used by buying that lot? At the rail yards, or,
I'm out of that conversation.
but I mean, but there's a choice to be made, or is there a better way to use it for housing? I don't know the answer to that, and I don't know what ARPA will allow either.
It'll
Well, I
allow,
know the county used ARPA funds to buy the buildings on Elm Street.
yeah, you can use it for land acquisition for sure, and And then, last time I, discussed it with the, developer out there, who was not interested in the amount we were willing to offer, so that's where we have.
I think he has a lot to say about it at this point, but
So, it is a point of negotiation that we can continue. But yeah, so we have plenty of time to figure out what we want to do with those funds.
Good.
I have a question.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go. Is it still about the ARPA stuff?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
go ahead.
I would rather give the money to a proven developer like JP Housing Trust to help them finish the summer than buy a lot from somebody we don't trust. That's just my opinion.
I think there's definitely needs to be a conversation on that, given where the developer is even gonna make it to phase two.
All the utilities are stubbed off at those lots.
Yeah.
I've seen it, I've walked it. There's nothing to trust or not trust. You buy the land, the utilities are right there.
Well, I
Then
just
you pay for
wonder
the
how
taps
long
and
it
the
make
activity.
its way to finalize an agreement.
Yeah, point made, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, I always thought we'd use it for that, but I don't have my heart set on it, let's put it that way. I always envisioned, and I had talked to, I'll digress a little bit. I had talked to Fading West about dropping a 5-plex in there. And so in that case, we made sure when we made the deal for the land that the URA now has, the Chafee Housing Trust is gonna build the 12 units on. We did that quite on purpose because the city can't divest itself of land easily.
Right.
And so in this other case, we wouldn't have to divest ourselves of that land if those were gonna be rental units and not for sale units. So that was my thought process, just so you have some idea of where I was going with that. Anyway, enough of that.
I had a question about the website improvements for ADA compliance. And are we, just being a statutory city, who decides if our modifications are adequate?
State.
The state.
Yep. Yeah, they're actually rolling out regs right now, and I attended a webinar about it last summer, and I understood the first 3 slides and then not so much after that, because I'm not a web designer. But you need actually somebody who does web design, and they've been doing it over and over and over.
I'm only speaking from the standpoint of like my husband's companies or groups website is within the state. They've had a lot of trouble going around and around with the state, where the state is like, yes, you can use this web designer, and then no, it's not adequate enough, and they had a lot of expenditure trying to meet the moving goalposts.
Stick with the web designer thing, right?
I think it's more an issue of moving goalposts.
Yep. I'll tell you, this is not going to be unlike the family program, where the state has certain regs that they have passed by legislation and a program, and they're just finding their way as they go to.
Right. Okay,
tell you what we need to do, so,
I just wanted some expectations,
Yep.
that's all.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, on line item 6216. We still have a little bit less than half of our funding for the building maintenance. Is there a plan currently to use some of that funding or?
I'm buying 10 chairs, does that help?
$25,000 worth of.
No,
Really nice chairs?
they're only about $200 each, so
Oh,
don't get
okay.
excited.
What a shame.
That's, can't close that gap.
Chairs that.
They're all gonna vibrate.
How
So
smart.
it's clear.
Yeah, that's a possibility,
Possibility for what?
to spend some of twenty
End of
twenty-three.
this year.
Yeah, no, I don't have a problem with that. What are you gonna spend it on though? I mean, you know,
How about new blinds for some of the offices upstairs that are falling apart?
Yeah, there's definitely stuff.
Chairs.
What I wanted to do is give Crystal, our finance director, a chance to get her feet on the ground a little bit more. We're gonna do a supplemental budget. And what I'd like to do is, if we are over budget, I would like to say, remember last year we were over budget, and she's like, 809 Spruce, that's why you're over budget. I would like to be on budget as much as we can and say, look, it's really this one thing that put us over budget. So I'd like her to kind of run the numbers to see how we are. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely, you know, we could definitely use a new conference room table upstairs and some chairs, and there's definitely, police department, I've been trying to get furniture for them for years, so, I think that's a good idea.
We looked at doing an historic preservation grant to help do some of the deferred maintenance on the building.
Oh, yes. Yes, that's like, that's a big, so if you've ever been to, Erie County's building, their county facility, it's amazing. So it's very similar to a building like this, where they took their old, you know, municipal county facility, and then they built a modern, I've toured the whole thing, it was like, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, the city itself maybe put in 2 million, and then they just chased grants for the rest of it, but it was a big project, so yes, I would love to do that someday, and do like a building, you know, renovation type of a thing.
So how come we're only putting 10 grand towards a grant writer?
Yeah. Baby steps.
well, that'll be the next conversation.
Yeah,
I just
Yeah.
really think we should invest more in grant writing.
yeah.
On that note, of spending, well, we're going back to spending more money, that we have allocated. You guys mentioned that you had a plan for the operating contingency fund to spend that out.
That'll be part of this next conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so both okay, cool.
So I wanna go, I wanna finish the thought on the
Sorry.
grant writing. No, that's okay, because it, you know, some of this ties in is what we're gonna spend in 2023 and then 2024. I think you're right. The other thing we need to remember is that it creates, I think we've had a pattern of taking things on and then adding additional tasks and additional duties to departments when they get overwhelmed. I would like to see our finance director get her feet on the ground a little bit more before she's having to do some type of grant management. And we get somebody in who can do the grant application and the grant management. I think the person that we're thinking for the $10,000 share is not that person. They would not be able to help manage the grants. It would be somebody who chases a lot of federal grants for us, which is great. But yeah, I mean, maybe that's something we think about. I think it's not a bad idea to up that. I hate to say that because we're 70,000, we still need to find $70,000 to balance.
Like, I just think with grant writing, the return on investment is there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, that's how the police department got some body cams. That's how they got some laptops. You've heard Van Daly, Chief Daly.
The fire
talk about
department, yes.
Fire department, it's fantastic. So. Yeah. Okay, Mayor, we'll figure out how we can figure that out.
Well, I will say this is as good a time as any to say, I'm gonna have to figure out how to balance this budget.
Yeah.
I have ideas, but you're gonna have to agree to them. And so, and that's on the fifth. That'll give me the next week.
I thought we had.
Well, okay, so we had the mayor and I had a discussion about this morning, it's maybe a good time to segue into that is. So what we're gonna do is we'll hold the public hearing, so we'll have, this is the last work session tonight, so we'll have the public hearing on the fifth, that isn't a crazy heavy agenda on the fifth for y'all, so. That's where we can go, forth and look at these and say, okay, sort of, it's the speak now or forever hold your peace kind of, and
Well, not just that, but I will present a balanced budget, and I'll explain how I did that.
yeah.
And it might give you heart, I don't know, we'll see.
And then, so just the timeline is, we would have that public hearing and the discussion. And then I think it would be overly optimistic to have the resolution to pass the budget that night. So I think our plan is to do it December 12th. I'll tell you all
No,
the,
December 19th.
oh, yeah, I'm
I was like,
I'm sorry.
wait a second.
Yes, December 19th. I will tell you, most cities who are weighing in on are staying on their regular schedules. A unanimous input from other cities is they are sticking to their schedules and not. Some cities have already passed their budgets, so they'll like, we'll just do a supplemental, but again, I think we should just kind of stay on our own track. We're, meeting with the assessor's office tomorrow
Tomorrow afternoon at 3.
to get some of that data that we're missing on the property tax question, so we should be able to give you everything on the 5th. We can chew on it for a while and then the resolution on the 12th.
The thing is, we've talked about this before. We've talked about this before. DOLA requires us to present to them a balanced budget, and it is an educated guess. That's all these budgets ever are. And so I'm gonna make the best educated guess I can and bring us in on budget. And then we'll have a discussion about, possible nuances to that if we want to tweak things. And that'll be up to you.
Is there, I really like the idea that Councilmember Hill brought up of having some type of one-time requests tracking so that we know, as opposed to a budget, it would make sense to maybe potentially use some of our funds that we already have collected in our bank to pay some of those off, such as the match requested by the Regional Housing Authority. Is that still in plan, or?
We could do that. And what Tim said was, there was a line item on here for transfer from the reserve fund.
Yeah.
It's a line item. We've never used that, but that's an option to us.
Yeah.
So yes, the answer is, that's one way to balance the budget. I've just never done it that way before.
Right.
So
I just assumed be in agony.
but you heard Main Street, Main Street's a relatively young program and they realize they don't have a reserve and it's insanely, obviously you're required to have a reserve. DOLA encourages us, LSCs have a reserve. And so having a healthy reserve means that, should something go sideways, you don't have to immediately do triage. Our reserve is somewhere, it fluctuates depending on accounts payable, but 3.84.
I think it's about 3.1 now. In the latest financials. Remember you spent.
A healthy reserve
Yeah,
is a good idea,
but I was
having an
gonna say,
obese
I-
reserve.
I was
is
gonna
not
say,
what's
on the base of the
appropriate.
financials, I see the bank accounts,
Okay,
so if you go into community banks, yeah. that's-
but when she does it, who does the
Correct.
balance sheet, that's a difference. She's showing our assets and our liabilities.
Mhm.
And then what's left theoretically would be your reserve. With the money that's not committed to anything right that second, and it changes.
I guess the reason I brought that up is because, based on the audit, we have more than just healthy reserve. We have above healthy, we have above what is recommended by recommended by the auditors. So to me, it made sense. Well, we're having a lot of one-time asks and anomaly amount of one-time asks. Would it make sense to then potentially subsidize that with our obese reserve that we have? Well,
Nice. Let me say this, to your point, I understand what you're saying completely, and I could live with that. I would say I'd rather not, and the reason I would rather not is because I think we have to maintain some discipline
Sure.
in our fiscal responsibility. But I'm open to suggestions. I'll leave it at that.
That makes sense.
And I guess my caution about like using that for housing authority is that at least even though they were pretty skeletal and didn't make a ton of sense, the budget that was set out looked like those costs would be escalating quite steeply. And so might we not expect that kind of large request to be more of a
Right.
repeat thing rather than a one-time?
The answer is it will repeat, and the reason it will repeat is future projects.
Yeah.
Every time they want to do, Tim and I were talking about the Harrison ball fields.
Mhm.
And the county's looking at that.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what the match is gonna be on that budget?
That's, any one of these things is not, it is not sustainable for the city and the county on their general funds to, I mean, maybe 911, but on the city and the county's general fund budgets, you're not gonna be able to run regional housing and transportation, all the other things that you wanna do. I mean, it's, at a certain point, we have to figure out, and that's why the Regional Housing Authority, look in the, I don't, it's not the charter, but the documents that created, they have ways to create their own funding.
Sure, but it's never going to be enough. And I mean, just speaking from the regional housing authority's perspective, like if we're going to be realistic, the way it will always operate is subsidies from both the county and the city.
Of course.
That's just,
I would add, we've committed over $140,000 a year out of 2A. And our budget, 35,000 out of this budget, to the Regional Housing Authority in perpetuity.
right,
And I think that was a great effort. So the future question becomes, how much can we sustain
yeah.
year over year? And I don't have the answer to that.
So I guess to me then, if the answer isn't, and that's fine if it's not to help subsidize some of this budget with some of our previous funding in our reserves funds, because it makes sense. You don't want to go over the top and then overextend. Then we have to start talking about, okay, well, some of these are almost non-negotiable. And do we have an ability to potentially raise some type of revenue for them, such as doubling down on 2A to help subsidize it, so it's not a continuous ask or other such strategies. Obviously, today's not the conversation for that, but
It'd be lovely to think about some sustainable revenue source.
Yep.
Which is what 2A was intended to be.
Right.
You know, everybody would like to have that sustainable source that they can depend on year after year.
And that, to tag on to that, as an ex-transportation engineer, there isn't a single transit agency in this country that covers our operating costs. They are all subsidized.
yeah,
And a lot of the transit agencies have found that they can't even count on, multi-county funding from year to year. They have to have a steady, sustainable source of income.
That's what Summit did with the sales tax increase. Yeah, I agree with that. The good thing is, in this budget, we have that $83,000, but the ongoing cost, that's for year, the second year is $38,000.
And that's with a grant paid for a lot of the capital.
That is true. That's true, all the vehicles, yeah.
so we'll have to come up with a strategy plan after, but that sounds like a next year conversation for us.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're talking 2024 budget, but you want to talk long-term.
Yeah.
I think having, every organization will tell you that it's hard to come and have your budget dependent on every year making your pitch to the city or county.
All right, thank you.
So is our next one the discussion of other funding?
Yeah,
So should we preface this discussion with some of the ideas that we had on this?
I think we probably could, and then leave it open to discussion on each one of these, but then maybe what we should hear from next is the Lake County Community Fund. And the conversations we've had around that and what that means to other funding. John, would you like to present to us, and then we'll have that conversation?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. And just want to thank you all
with this tremendous support of the community fund. We are your community fund for Lake County and that building. We have, yeah, I think in the budget, Greg, you mentioned you're gonna request $50,000 for the grant program. Or
Not yet.
not yet, but.
Give us your pitch, then we'll talk.
Okay, but, just, a couple things that, again, thank you very much. Just kind of overview as well. We're young, we're 7 years old, and during this period, the community fund has awarded 118 grants totaling $360,000 since 2017. And we were originally created by a task force back in 2014, looking to the day when Climax mine is depleted and shuts down. What are we gonna do? And the community fund was, the foundation of that concept was to attract and encourage investment in the Lake County from a philanthropic point of view. There is so much money out there in philanthropy, and that we need to tap into that for the future quality of life of Lake County, and looking forward to when the mine shuts down. So that's how, so the benefits, Mayor Lobby was part of that original board and committee that helped establish that. And I just have to say, our board has been phenomenal in terms of laying a sound foundation for a community fund, and moving forward into the future. This past year, we brought on, in realizing the tremendous amount of money that's out there, grant writing team, which comprises of 3 people of this group. And they started in March, and the first application that they worked on and applied for, as you probably aware, the congressional designated spending, Senator Bennett Hickenlooper and Representative Pedersen, they have somewhere upwards of about $180 million to grant out to Colorado communities and organizations. So our team submitted on behalf of the Lake County Regional Housing Authority a $1.7 million request through the congressional designated spending. And we did hear about a month ago from Congresswoman Representative Brittany Pedersen that she deemed it hit all the marks that they need. And it was one of 15 requests that she forwarded on to the House Appropriations Committee. So it did make the next step, which was very encouraging. That doesn't mean we're gonna get it, and it doesn't mean we're gonna get a full 1.7 million, but at least it did pass her marks and what she was looking for. During that period, since March, our grant team has submitted $2.4 million in grant requests. And we've made some great relationships with Colorado Health Foundation, Chris Bowie, who is the manager or the senior director of grants for the Colorado Health Foundation. We've submitted 2 grants totaling $468,000. He made a site visit last week, which is another encouraging sign. And we met with him. We'll hear end of January regarding that.
And what are those grants for?
It is building, primarily looking at our Latinx community, building infrastructure. In terms of Ladera Latinx has just received grant funding to hire their first staff person. And there's a lot that has to go into that in building their organization, because it's been a volunteer organization, and they need so a lot of that funding is going into that, helping get that organization going. And then the other thing is we want to start initiate a new grant program at some point, which would be similar to it would be the Welcome Fund, which would award grants to our marginalized community, our Latinx community. So that's in the works there, and we have gotten very positive feedback from the Colorado Health Foundation regarding that. And just sort of in the funding of the grants that we've awarded during this period of time, for example, we've awarded Get Outdoors Leadville last 4 years, $44,000 for Rockies Rock Camp, providing scholarships and tuition assistance for families so that those children can participate in that. We funded the remodeling of the St. George Food Pantry, $10,000 to help with the kitchen there. We funded $8,000 to purchase the mobile food pantry that goes out to the communities delivering food. One of the things, critical areas that we've been aware of, I'm a member of the Childhood Coalition, been a member for the past 3 years, 4 years. And just became very aware that we do not have licensed daycare from 0 to 1. We have waiting lists for children that want to get into families that want to get their children into daycare. So this is a critical area, because in terms of human development from 0 to 5, kindergarten is probably the most critical age in terms of setting children up for success in school and future careers. And it's an area that is critical here. Not only that, but also from an economic standpoint. So we created the Early Care and Childhood Fund. And that vehicle is to write grants, seek fundraising, being a 501c3. And we did receive our first grant, Freeport at $35,000, which is a beginning point.
Can I interrupt you? Was that through, Katie and her grant writing team? Was that grant
Yes.
done by them? Okay, I just want to make sure
Yes.
I understand what we're talking about.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and Stacy Petty and Brooke Carlson, they manage that fund. Part of the other thing that, you know, we're involved with, that we are the fiscal sponsor for 22 local organizations. From Lake County School District, Lake County Public Library, Gallagher's Leadville, Ladera's Latinx. One of the things that came out of the resilience plan that Freeport paid for was that as a community, we need to collaborate and consolidate many of our administrative functions, particularly the nonprofit sector. So part of that we're doing as we manage the finances, we assist with fundraising, we're assisting with grant writing with 22 local organizations. So part of being the fiscal sponsor for these 22 organizations, each one of them by themselves, with the exception of 2, would not be standalone 501c3s. We provide that umbrella. So you can make a charitable contribution to the Leadville Dance Collaborative as an example through the community fund. So we're providing that. The other thing that came out of the resilience report from the report was we need a grant writer in this community and we need to collaborate. And when I'm on the Freeport McMoran Community Investment Committee, and one of the messages that came out loud and clear from Freeport Foundation, from Colorado Health Foundation, from the Vail Valley Foundation, is that collaboration is key. We need to collaborate as a community. And when the outside world looks into us and we're out there requesting and looking for funds, that's critical. But the other recommendation was that from the resilience plan was that we should have a grant writer and invest in grant writing for that program. So that is something the community fund has done. And like I said, since March, we have requests since March, $2.4 million out there right now. And so and just, you know, even back in just the history of the community fund, just briefly, the last 4 years going through COVID, when Governor Polis shut the state down March 14, 2020. As you know, 75–80% of our workforce works outside of the county. They work in Eagle County, work in Summit. Many people were without the ability to pay for rent or utilities. Our community fund, we set up, we have the disaster relief fund. Disaster relief fund is pivoted to raise money to help pay utilities, help pay rent for people that had lost their jobs. So over the period of time, our board led the effort. We as a community raised over $650,000. 100% of those funds went to pay for rent and utilities. And we were written up by the Urban Institute wrote up our model as an example. What we were one of 4 communities in the United States that the Urban Institute focused on how we handle that period of time in COVID when people were without jobs and work. The other area is food security. During this period, which COVID raised, it was really became clear food security is a huge issue. And we raised $116,000 for a food voucher program, working together with St. George Food Pantry. We had these vouchers, $40 vouchers, which were handed out, no questions asked, to anybody that came to St. George for food, or when the mobile food pantry went out to the communities, these $40 food vouchers were good at 8 local restaurants that people could take their families to have a meal. And we distributed 2,400 of these $40 food vouchers. And we, during that period of COVID, the Colorado Restaurant Association estimated that Colorado restaurants lost $3 billion in revenue during that period. And we were able, through this program, we reimbursed 8 restaurants $95,000 as part of that food voucher program. So there was 2 pieces to that. One was we helped our community with food security, getting out and having a nice meal. And then also as an economic stimulus with our local 8 restaurants that participate in the program. So the other thing that we've been involved with is the Community Fund is the regional champion for Colorado Gives Day. And we just, a couple weeks ago, Mayor Lobby and our county commissioners declared Lake County and the city of Leadville, December 5th is Colorado Gives Day in Lake County and city of Leadville. And so that was a very nice thing. Governor Polis is doing the same. December 5th is Colorado Gives Day in the state of Colorado. But during that period, we've been the regional champion since 2020. And part of that is assisting our local nonprofits with fundraising, with creating awareness, PR, that sort of thing. We have raised, since 2020, our community, $526,000 for Colorado Gives Day on that one day. And that's 25 organizations have been involved. Tomorrow, Matt Renew is coming, 9 News is coming. They're going to do a short story on the community fund, what we've been doing with Colorado Gives Day, and then we're going to focus on St. George Food Pantry. So he's going to be here, and that will air on December 5th on Colorado Gives Day. So as one thing on that rental program that I talked about during COVID, we helped 721 households with rent and utilities, which translates into 2,500 individuals that we kept whole in their homes during that period when people were unemployed there. So I want to thank you because the city has been part of this effort, contributing funds both to the grant and utility assistance, the food card program, and also the grant program, which, as I said, we've awarded 118 grants totaling $360,000. One final note I want to make, and I want to thank Greg Lobby, and he's been a founder, one of the founding board members, which they've done a phenomenal job. But we've done 2 events, and one is the State of the Community, and the other is the community dinner. And you know, I think they've been great events, but there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that you don't see. And without Greg, I mean, Greg has been the key person in pulling those 2 events off. And I can't thank you enough, Greg, for.
You got a month left to it.
But anyway, his support. So I've been very proud to serve this community and serve the Lake County Community Fund and serve all of you. But this has been a highlight of my career. So thank you.
Thank you, John. We're trying to figure out what you do in your spare time, but never mind. I do have a question.
Yes.
You've asked for $10,000 for the grant writing. This is that grant writing team, right?
Yes. And there's 3 people in that.
If we participate to the tune of $10,000, well, first of all, how much are you gonna pay them in 2024 to do grants? What's the total?
Our budget for them is $48,000. for 3 people.
Okay, where's the rest of it coming from?
Well, I've requested 20,000 from, the county. And the seed funding that came from this, and this is something that Climax was really supportive of. The seed funding came 17,000 from Freeport, and then for this first year, and then the community fund has spent money on the balance for
Okay.
this year.
My question is, for our $10,000, how much direction are we able to give towards grant writing? Or are we somehow assured that a certain amount of that will be directed to city? I don't know. Somebody help me out here.
Well, I've got a question. How do you establish your priorities in this
Yeah,
post-COVID
That's a
era?
good one.
Well,
How do you decide which grants to award and how do you decide which grants to apply for?
You know, right now, we've gone after the low hanging fruit that's out there. And particularly, the Colorado Health Foundation has been very interested in communities of color. And that's been, their focus. So, it's, you know, with our demographics here, that was a pretty obvious. And with our critical needs here, but it really is, it boils down to, giving them direction, that we want you to look at certain areas there. I mean, the congressional designated spending was another low hanging fruit. I mean, there's almost $200 million out there that is just sitting there for people to make an application.
We only have.
And so, you know, that's just sitting down and meeting with our team and looking at what's out there and what should we be looking for.
Okay,
I have a operating question.
Yes.
I know how the dynamic works for Líderes Latinx. I am an active member of that group.
Yeah.
We wrote the grant, I'm imagining with your support, for the position. Is that typically the dynamic in which you operate with your 22 umbrella nonprofits that you support?
Each one is very unique and
Yeah.
very special in terms of their needs. So today we met with Stacy. We met with Angel.
Mhm.
We met with Maida. We met with Paloma. And
Miriam.
with Kirsten, and bless her heart, she is phenomenal. And what's really exciting about what's happening with Líderes, this is brand new. They're hiring their first staff person. They're going to formalize a board of directors. They're going to apply for to the state of Colorado to become an official organization. They're going to get an EIN there. And, you know, there's going to be quite a bit of work in getting this going, and then we're going to help manage the payroll for them.
Mhm.
Initially, you know, and show how with federal withholding, they may hire this first person as on a contract basis, or maybe a salary person. That's still to be developed. But so a lot of these pieces are coming together. I mean, it's very exciting. So each organization is different.
Yeah.
For example, we also the fiscal sponsor for Lake County Public Library. They're a government entity, right? But they have a fundraising arm that raises money through us for the banned book week. So we've done 2 years of banned books through the public library, raising money for us, for them through the community fund. So each one's different. Yellow Doors Leadville is a quasi-governmental agency. LaCoste is a very unique Lake County Open Space Initiative. They are a collaboration of government, different water conservation districts, that sort of thing.
I think we're getting a little too far. You gotta pull this back to the budget, John.
But each one is different and special, and we provide the.
Okay, Dana, you had a question?
Yeah,
So many grants are only available for nonprofits of a certain size, you know, like at least $1 million or et cetera. Being a fiscal sponsor for some of these smaller nonprofits, like let's say Leadville Dance Collective, because you mentioned them, if they see a grant that they might be able to apply for, but they're not a large enough nonprofit, does being a fiscal sponsor enable them to apply for a grant through the Lake County Community Fund that they wouldn't otherwise be eligible for?
yes, and that's, without us, their opportunities for applying for grants would probably be. And now each funder is a little bit different on how they look at that in terms of the fiscal sponsor arrangement, but that certainly it's a big plus that we are their fiscal sponsors.
So I guess my understanding is that the $10,000 that we'd help fund, it would benefit us somewhat, but realistically, it's mostly as a continuation of your all's growth in the same trajectory that you're currently going in. Is that a correct assessment?
Yes, well, for example, this year, we applied for 1.7 million on
Right,
behalf of the Leadville Lake County Regional Housing. Authority.
right,
That didn't cost me done,
right.
you know, so, but hopefully we're gonna get something out of that.
Not to say that we wouldn't fund it. In fact, my position is that we do fund it, but I also think that that still doesn't address the need that we have within city council to have a dedicated city council for city.
It may not supplant that. That's a good point. And I think that's
But
what
I think, yeah.
you've been thinking.
But
Let's bear with us a second here.
Yeah.
Would you chime in on that, please?
Correct, because the person that would just be a grant writer for, certain types of grants, we need the person who's gonna help write all the grants and also help manage it.
Yeah,
If we were gonna do that, we'd have to find out where in the budget that would fit,
Of
or
course.
do we redirect a person in this budget to also do grant writing? I don't know the answer to that yet, but
and I guess that's kind of what my point is that's fine. I'm okay if it's not into today's budget or the December 5th budget, but as long as we're aware is this is a huge need for a community and the $10,000 will go pretty far, it sounds like. And we could still utilize that and that doesn't go away because it doesn't subsidize a need for an internal grant management and grant writing team. Hopefully they work collaboratively with you all to really make sure we are not duplicating services, but it really does seem from my perspective that we would benefit from having that as a standalone thing completely outside of the $10,000 that we give to the community fund.
You know,
so in your mind, would that need to be, well, maybe more important, in your mind, we're talking a full-time person, we're talking about part-time, what are we talking about?
Well, we talked about part-time. In the goal setting, we talked about part-time. I don't think at this point for 2024, I do not think it will be full-time.
No, I agree with that, but then where would it fit in as part-time? I guess is the question. Is there anybody in our plans for 2024 that could do grant writing in addition to whatever else they do?
No, our administrative assistant
What about our HR person?
could be.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, I mean, I can tell you when we wrote that, when I wrote the human resources job description, the admin job description, I put in other duties, grant writing.
Okay, all right. So we possibly have room to make that work in 2024? Okay, I just try to understand it.
Somewhere.
I guess that's fine, and it might work for 2024, but we're not gonna hire a part-time grant writer. That seems pretty hard to do unless we subsidize it with something else. As an internal staff, unless they're already working potentially in other departments.
Or we do just what the community fund has done.
Yeah.
They basically fund a piece of contractually of a grant writer.
Can I just explain?
Please, quickly.
This grant writing team, their experience writing government grants, writing grants, town of Vale. So there is that experience experience and relationships in that world really make a difference. And the other thing is, for example, okay, today we had a meeting with the Denver Foundation. Denver Foundation is about 100 years old. They have over $1 billion in assets. We had a meeting with them and talked to them about some of our critical needs like childcare, affordable housing. They asked us to send them a synopsis of some of our critical areas of need, affordable housing, childcare, and our whole list. They have over 1,000 donor advised funds that they manage. And they're going to pitch what we're sending them. They're going to pitch that to their donor advised funds to see if there's any interest there in supporting some of the programs that we have. So that's an example, we may not get nothing, but at least we're getting out there and we're getting in front of people. And so.
Okay,
that's-
so I'm also in favor of the 10,000. It seems like, and I'm not sure I'm going with this thought. What if it were 20,000? I'm just tossing out ideas now. And then somehow that buys us more bandwidth for localized. You said that group, likes funding for the city of Vale, for the town of Vale.
Why wouldn't we just hire them on our own?
For throwing that much money in it.
That's,
Well, the collaboration part of it, I think, is part of the thought process. So
And
I think we could go either way.
so what I'm understanding is that you have access to resources that would take us time to build up, right? I think that's totally fair, makes total sense. You have relationships already established. And that's great. And again, I'm totally in favor with the 10,000, even if we pursue our other thing, but me thinking long-term, my long-term goal, whether it's 24 or 26, at some point, I would love for the city to have some type of grant management and grant writing internal skill set and established so that we can have a growing grant ability. Because there's a lot of money, like you mentioned, that is just out of our community, and it is important that we have the ability to have those employees focus for the city so that we can remodel this building, for example, with a grant. And obviously that requires a big chunk of time from someone to write that grant and a big chunk of time to manage it, just working in the nonprofit sector for so long. So long-term goal for me would have someone who's here able to report back on us where our progress is, for example, report to our city administrator to report to us.
let me just say something too. That's part of the role of a community foundation. That government supports the local community foundation, okay? The Vail Valley Foundation last year, 2022, received $400,000 from Eagle County. The Eagle County Community Foundation received $700,000 from Eagle County government. The Denver Foundation, through the end of September this year, 23, has received over $1 million from the city and county of Denver for various programs, whether it's for grant awards or whether it is things like grant writing, program expenses, that sort of thing. The city of Park City awarded the Park City Community Foundation $1 million. 100% of that funding goes towards childcare. And so those are examples of government supporting the local community foundation. And that's one of the roles that we can play here as well. And, we're growing as well, but this is part of what a community foundation is there for. And, specifically reaching out to philanthropy, because there's so much money out there. And then also the government grants as well.
I have a question regarding our budget. In the past, we have always had like a $9,000 contribution to the Lake County Community Fund. It seemed like in an earlier version it was 12 and then back down to 9. Where is it at all? I see the $10,000 for grant, but now I've lost track of, are we doing that still?
I don't know where we put it, but you're absolutely correct about that. It's always been in the operating contingency line item. And you're right, it was $9,000
Okay.
last year. And you'd have to look at last year's notes and they get
Yeah.
overwritten. So you teed it up, thank you. Here's the conversation. We did that about 5 years ago, quite on purpose. Gave that money to the Lake County Community Fund because people were coming to us
right.
all during the year. And all of them were great causes and they all, we felt for all of them, but we didn't have much money. And we also didn't have the bandwidth to deal with all those requests. So we said, okay, we're gonna give the Lake County Community Fund the money and you go to them and go through the grant process. And the community funds grant process has expanded each year. I think last year they had about $65,000 in that grant process. So, Lori, she suggested it at the last work session, maybe city council meeting. We talked about it again today. Would you like to tell us what your idea is?
Okay, so what And the history of it, the mayor explained, I was sort of aware of this, but that we had tried to relieve our own administrative burden and one-off request by doing the Lake County Community Fund. So we had done that in the past, but what we're finding and what I found as we're trying to, put these other requests on the agenda is what I'm realizing is some organizations have been coming to us. We want this, we want that, we want this other thing. And we started doing the one-off requests again, as the mayor was saying, the ones and twos. And what I've realized is some organizations haven't even come to us. So should I have reached out to them and said, we're doing this other request thing and you need to come to us today? And what I realized is, and I said before, we don't have a system. We deviated from the system that we created, and we're now giving money to Lake County Community Fund, who vets and does a process for deciding who they're gonna give money to. And so we've done that, but now people are coming to us separately. And it feels like it can have the potential to be, I don't wanna say unfair, but just because somebody says, oh, I'm gonna come to the city council and ask for money. So what we have is a problem with our 2024 budget, which is you look right now at the budget and we are in the red $70,000. That is not including the request that you're hearing tonight. So the request that you're hearing tonight from other than Main Street and is Lake County Community Fund in this? In the No, are they in?
They're in already.
So the other organizations aren't in the
C4
budget.
is not in, Childhood Coalition is not in, they're not in this
Shaky Housing
budget.
Trust. Okay, so
Shaky Housing Trust is not in this budget.
so some of the other entities you're going to hear from tonight asking money are not in the budget yet, and we're already $70,000 in the hole. So my proposal was looking at, and you, Councilmember Luma Leal brought it up, is we have money left over from 2023 in contingency, $63,000. That's why I asked about this last time. Because I think we need to figure out what could we fund out of 2023 and not put in 2024. So I think some of these organizations probably wouldn't care if the check was cut in December versus January. So I wanted to tee up that conversation, but I also want to create a better system. We can't have this system next year where some people thought to come down to council and ask for money and some people didn't. So my proposal is going forward that we just do a donation to Lake County Community Fund going forward, and we need to decide how much that amount is. And that if there are requests throughout the year, we have a program and a system for that, because otherwise it seems like it is only benefits the people who learn to come to the city council in the middle of the year.
Well, I have to say in fairness, I did invite the Child Care Coalition to come to city
Right.
council.
Yep.
Just so we're clear on that one, Brooke.
Well, and I think
Yeah,
that's
so
important too,
that's all
because-
me.
Because there are some people at the table we didn't invite who've come before. So St. George's came for $30,000 last year. Different organizations have come to us at different times. And I think we need to have a better system so that we're considering them. If we're gonna do it, we should say, here's the time to apply. So you can see them all at once. You can see this is how much money we have and they're all coming and we need to evaluate it all at one time. So
I guess to me, the reason why we're in this situation is out of necessity. We were only donating X amount of money, 9,000.
It's very small number, yeah.
And that's not gonna subsidize any of the requests that we're gonna get probably today.
well, so we haven't
And-
finished the proposal.
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, so, that is where I think we need to up the amount to the Lake County Community Fund. So I think one of the proposals is if, one of the options is to take $50,000 out of the contingency that we have left. So we have 63,000 and we need some of that money to remain. $50,000 out of contingency and give it to the Lake County Community Fund and let them administer it.
I think that sounds good. I guess my question is like, where do we draw the line and what are we using an operating contingency for
Mhm.
moving forward? Like, do we expect the school, when the school has their play to go to Lake County Community Fund? Do we expect,
And those are great questions. I would say this. We never know each year who's gonna need what. And like the school play is always kind of a one-off. That's a great what did they ask for, $2,000 last year, and we had money. Remember, a lot of this contingency fund was still left. Really was just residual to balance the budget. We had extra money at the end of the year, and we just stuck it in there. It was $74,000, $73,000 that we had extra. We said, we'll just put it in that contingent line item. And so we do have money sitting there that there was never a plan for. So the proposal has been, what we've discussed is, let's take 50,000 out of that and give it to the Lake County Community Fund this year. Where they had requested $20,000 in next year's budget. I've taken that out. And then if we do the $50,000, that would boost their I'm sorry, lost the word, but their ability to grant funds tremendously.
I guess one of the issues I have with that is just knowing the nature of some of these requests. I mean, it just feels, for the amount that could be given, not worth writing a grant for that. And it's easier to come to this. So I understand the need for a system in place so that we're not bombarded with a bunch of people. But ultimately, if it's out of equity, then the same problem still exists. How are people gonna know to go to the community fund? Then it's the same dynamic. It's gonna still cater to the people who understand the system. The system's now just a little bit tweaked. You have to go to the community fund rather than city council and make a presentation. That's fine. I don't mind that personally, but also, and I'm not sure if this is how yours works, but having to grant write for potentially limited amounts of money. I'll be more direct. For example, $45,000 or $50,000 is the ask for the childcare coalition, right? If that money isn't an ask, because the limitation set by the community fund is too low because we're donating X amount, then in nature, they're gonna come to us, right? If they understand the system, then they're still gonna come to us and say, well, community fund can't fund this because their requests are only for 20,000 at maximum or whatever. So then we'll go to the city to subsidize the rest of it. So I don't think it fully eliminates it because of the nature of that. And I would need to understand how that works and everything in detail of like, would there be enough money to be able to subsidize that so that it's not a burden on us? And is that system going to fully work?
To your point, I would say any substantial ask, you just say, I'm sorry, those have to go to the community fund. That's our process. That part could be pretty simple.
We do quite a bit of advertising, about the grant program is open. And so we do promote that. Program. Say if there's a specific sum of money that went to the early care education. X dollar that goes into that fund, say the city wants to contribute. That fund, that money belongs to that fund, that organization. And Stacy Petty and Brooke Carlson, they manage that. But it's under the community fund that we provide the umbrella, the 501c3 for them.
I'm gonna throw another wild card in here.
Sure.
And
It was your idea. Remember that? It was your idea. We spent $45,000 in economic development.
Yeah.
And you had said, we could parse economic development forever. But there are some things that really are economic showstoppers for us because we're not providing the child care and housing are two of those things, and they're hurting us economically. So it could be argued that $45,000 could be used for economic betterment of our community, and that the child care coalition might be one way to go with that. I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah, I guess I like the idea because I came up with it. But just generally speaking, this is like the whole problem I have with like just giving all the money to one fund. I would like, as a city council person, to have some amount of ability to dictate where some of the money goes.
Except that is such a slippery slope.
Of course it is.
Into administrative nightmare.
And
That's what we're trying to avoid.
And I think it's important that we set up some type of safeguard for some of the smaller, especially for some of the smaller requests, I think for me, it's quite the contrary. Smaller requests could always go through the community fund. Bigger requests should come to city council because ultimately we have a much bigger budget than the community fund. And that doesn't mean we're gonna fund all of them. And
Wait, was that $69,000 negative or positive? Oh, it's negative.
Exactly, and my point is, it makes a lot of sense for city council to come to some of these conclusions for some of the bigger asks, such as $50,000 for the Child Care Coalition. Some of the smaller requests make much more sense to me to go through a process like this if we're going to fund it and if their barrier to entry is minimal.
Okay, keep in mind, we're not making definitive decisions tonight.
So we
We
should
can-
send the students to the.
We can
LCC.
try and, I would still like to hear from the other, people here to present to us, the Child Care Coalition, C4 and JP Housing Trust.
Yep.
So I'd like to get on with that and hear from them and then enter into a conversation based on the totality of what we've been asked. That makes sense?
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
I can't believe, I'm part of the Lake County Community Fund, I still can't believe all you do.
But it's all good.
I'm gonna grab some water real quick.
Well, I'd like to hear from you next, if that's okay.
Sure, I mean, I'm gonna be fully transparent, I wasn't sure what to expect from tonight, since I came a few months back and did my entire proposal. So nothing would be different, I think the proposal packet is in the agenda as well. I had spoken with Christian a little bit and I had asked Lori what would be best in terms of reviewing what the proposal was, or what the ask was and why, and where we are currently. We do all like updates, I just don't wanna repeat any information and waste your time.
Well, just, for my benefit, I know I've been part of the conversation, but I don't remember everything, so, what was the $50,000 you used for currently? And I know that what you were looking for is year-over-year sustainability. And I'm not sure we're there, but it's part of the conversation. So give us some idea of what would this $50,000 provide?
Sure, so I guess I'll start with a little bit of history of why, we thought about a fund versus, so I work for Build a Generation and I facilitate the Child Care Coalition, yes. We get grants, that is then, we can allocate certain amount of those grants directly to providers, but it's minimal, it's not enough. And so the coalition's thoughts were, this isn't like a way to sustain the system, and a way to sustain the system needs to be sustainable funding, such as our other regions have. Summit and Eagle County have tax allocations that are going towards their childcare system, and then Garfield-Pitkin is doing this special tax allocation that they're trying to get. So needless to be said, there was nothing here, and so we decided, what does that look like? We worked closely with Greg and with Kayla to say, what does that look like in Lake County? Because getting a pass here is gonna be challenging for childcare, seeing as that, there's only so many families, there's just over 400 families that have children under the age of 5, and getting that passed would be challenging. The amount of education that would need to go into the public understanding, it's not just about the childcare, but it's about like just the trickle down effect of the dominoes of someone doesn't have childcare, they can't live here, they can't work here, they can't contribute to this community, right? Takes just years of understanding and educating the public in order to try to get something like that passed. So when we created the fund, we thought, under the LCCF, we thought we would go directly to city and county to get a start. We went to the 3 program providers that we had and asked for a budget ask, write down on where where their tuition costs were, what their operating costs were, salary, all of that. And from those totals, we developed, our requests, our asks of the city and county, and tried to develop a budget for ourselves. So that's a little bit of the background, and now where we're at is, heavy focus on staff retention and, recruitment efforts, because we know that the number one reason why we're not able to provide slots is because we don't have enough incentive for people to become preschool teachers, particularly because preschool teachers are not paid on the same scale and salary that primary school and secondary school teachers are. And then also family tuition assistance is huge. Lake County has, you know, we have federal and state programs such as the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, but the amount, the percentage of poverty level that a household has to be at is far above what anybody would be able to live at here. So people don't qualify, right? But still tuition is too high for them to be able to pay for full-time care. So there's a huge middle gap of families that aren't eligible for the already existing financial assistance, but still can't pay for childcare full-time, can't go to work. And then the third piece of that is operational costs. So things like, for instance, Bright Start is limited to the space that they have, right? They have 2 classrooms. What if we had the ability to get more staff? What does that mean? What kind of capital would they be able to qualify for to build or get a new building? And then just the endless amounts of cost for materials and rental and all that. So that's where we're at. We've designed, myself, Stacy Petty, and 2 other professionals in early childcare have designed an application form already, so that we're encouraging not only programs, but staff to apply directly for health stipends. And then we're also going to request in those applications, if you're applying for funds, you have to give a certain amount directly to your family. So you have to apply for tuition assistance in order to apply in general. Does that make sense? We also wanted to emphasize that there are family, friends, and neighbors. Those are people who are providing childcare that don't have a license. They provide upwards of probably over 100 children with care in the community, and incentivizing them to either get a license or become what they call qualified non-exempt. And that means you have a certain amount of children in your home, but you are not required to get a license because it is safe to have up to 3 kids in your home. And if you go through that qualified exempt process to make sure your home is safe for them, then you also are going to be able to apply for funds for materials or I'm forgetting what the other 2 are, but really breaking down, like I said, those 3 big buckets of allowable costs to make sure that we're incentivizing staff to stay, incentivizing staff to come, and making sure that we can support families that still are on that like brink of not being able to get care thus far. And the money, the specific ask requests came from us gathering information from the program providers that are here.
Questions?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you were mentioning about the tuition assistance and then said so does that make sense? And it actually didn't. So I'm sorry, I'm gonna go back to that. So am I understanding that, like, if I were to bring my child and want to enroll them in one of these centers, that regardless if I could pay or not, you would want me to apply for tuition assistance?
No, so
Okay.
whoever applies to, so we have the fund existing, yes, we have the $35,000 from the grant that we have. So say that that's all we get this year, great. We're gonna open up the applications in January. Any program or person can apply for those funds, but when they apply, within their application, part of their request has to go towards family tuition assistance.
Okay.
So say that the center wants to apply for $12,000. Of that 12,000, they have to show how much of that 12,000 will be going directly to their families. And then there will be a requirement, we're designing kind of guidelines around like who they're giving back to and how they're tracking it and all that, and how it's helping. But the specific, I think we really wanted to make sure that when providers are applying for money, they're making sure to prioritize families as well.
Okay.
and not just operational
Thank
costs
you.
and stuff.
Sorry, I got lost in the weeds.
No,
there.
that's
Thanks for
okay.
clarifying.
And for context, preschool teachers make like 24,000 in our community, so.
I was gonna say saying that they make less than our
Or,
K through
yeah.
12 educators who already
That's not even.
are woeful, yeah, it's like.
Technically, no, but they also technically don't work full time, so.
All right.
They do work full time, it's just a matter of, I think,
Yeah,
we're still in a giant cultural shift of understanding preschool teachers as teachers.
Mhm.
For so
Crazy.
long, they were daycare
Crazy.
centers, and the amount of education that's required of preschool teachers now is comparable to a primary school teacher.
yeah.
I'd like to check in on Cisco. You had wanted to comment at this point.
I'd love to, should I go to the podium?
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm just here to advocate tonight for supporting that fund. I think supporting the fund directly is the most supportive. Supporting the community fund is also a step in that direction because it does so much for that early childhood fund. I think just imagine our K through 12 schools without any property tax funding, without state funding, without federal funding. That's a private school. Who can afford private schools? Quite wealthy people, right? That's the state of early childhood in our community right now. We've been very fortunate to get a bunch of ARPA money the past 3 years, and that's awesome. I think it proves that if you put money into that, it works, but that money will run out. So we need to, I think, it's too bad that we live in a society where the public funding for early childhood has to come locally, but that's the society we live in right now. And so I think if we want childcare to be accessible to most of our community, it's gonna look like some kind of local contribution, whether it's some kind of new tax or some kind of allocation from the existing tax base. I want to speak to the people Brooke mentioned who we call the missing middle. So a lot of our families make too much money to qualify for CCAP, the state assistance, but not enough to really thrive and afford childcare. Probably a big piece of Leadville's economic future is tourism and service industry, right? In a tourism and service industry economy, most households are gonna have all the adults working. Most folks can't make enough money can't live on one income in a tourism and service industry economy. That means childcare is gonna be essential to that economic growth. And then being able to directly help those families afford childcare so that they can stay in the workforce. I think that's what a big part of what this fund would do. So thank you for considering. I know you got a lot of good stuff to consider and I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Cisco.
Yeah.
I'd like to make a statement about this. It all boils down to priorities. That's what budgets are, you know, and this budget, it's kind of sailed already, you know, so it's hard to realign priorities in the future. As we look at budgets for the next 10 years. Not you and I. We have to decide, we have to start thinking about what's really important and what maybe is less important. Now, it's hard to imagine anything being less important, you know, but that's the nature of what the challenge that you're gonna be met with in the future is, okay, how important is childcare to this community? If it is, what as a city are we willing to commit to that? And that's not the conversation for tonight. This is just a future thought. Housing, we're already in over our heads on housing. And sure, it's important. We get that, but we're committing at this point over $440,000 in 2024 to housing. So just
Have you ever, because I think what you're talking about is priority-based budgeting, which
could be.
I think Longmont does in place of a line item budget, which is all we have ever.
Well, that's what our vision is about in the first place. You know, and then build, but to your point, yeah.
Yeah.
And in fact, guess what?
I know, I'm gonna be talking to Longmont, see how they do it.
But I don't want to overburden us with that thought, but it is an important way to look at budgets.
Mhm.
Because the budget is what we stand for as a community.
Yeah.
For the time being, I love that idea and I would totally support it moving forward. Future mayor, for this specific ask, I still would stand strong that, spending our economic development fund that we have not allocated yet makes a lot of sense for this specific ask, because it is something that we have not invested in yet. And it's something that is incredibly important to our current community that exists today. And at the very least for this year, it makes a lot of sense, but like Mayor said, we need to plan out how that's gonna look for future years, well ahead before this ever happens.
This year's kind of reaction.
Yeah.
It's true.
And that's kind of why I thought, well, we have a line item for this, right? We could supplement it, so it's not adding to this minus $70,000 that we have. Let's just use that for this specific ask, the 5,000, I'm sure we can figure somewhere to figure out,
Okay, we're not making decisions this morning.
Sure,
I
sure.
appreciate the thought on that. I would support that, but we'll get to that later if that's okay.
sure.
This time, and thank you so much, Brooke and Cisco.
Okay.
I'd like to hear from Emily next. Are you still awake, Emily?
Hello, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
hear you just fine.
So, before we start, I want to make a disclosure. I work under a department that's going to be an ask. None of the money would go directly to me in any way, but if you guys would like, I could step out,
The good news is we're not making any decisions.
Yeah,
So,
and I'm happy to stay.
thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for taking the time to hear from C4 tonight. If we have not met, I'm Emily Olson. I'm the Executive Director of C4 here in Lake County. And our request this evening is really specific to our Energy Resource Center and the work that C4 has been doing around providing assistance to Lake County families to help with things like their energy costs. We serve a number of families who are paying an additional $200 to $500 a month right now in utilities. And in a lot of communities, that's almost like an additional rent payment. And so our request of the city is $20,000 to help support our Energy Resource Center. We have given out $120,000 to date this year to Lake County community members. And next year, we are hoping that that number will increase to over $300,000. And that is all money that goes directly to pay past due utility bills, to address delayed maintenance in Lake County homes, all things that are part of affordable housing in our community. But there's not a whole lot of funding for it. The specific funding from the city would be used to help us add an energy director position to C4 and to help us expand our rebate program. So our rebate program last year, but I think it came out of the 2022 budget, I want to say. The city helped us expand our rebates where we help Lake County families pay for home energy audits and improvements to their homes to help reduce their energy usage and energy costs. The city supported us with $4,000, and with that funding, we were able to grow our rebate pool from $4,000 to $10,000 with assistance from the county. And next year, we're hoping to grow that to $20,000. I don't think I need to give everyone, the information on the state of our existing current housing stock. But we are still working in homes that don't have insulation, that have windows that are broken, doors that are broken, have heating systems that are not functioning properly, that are decades older than when they should have been replaced. And all of those things contribute to our community members having extremely high utility bills And then when they go to sell those homes, that means that even if a Lake County family manages to get a mortgage and can afford that home, that means they're facing pretty significant investments immediately upon purchasing a home here. And so that's really what our energy program has been focused on, is how can we make sure that our community can afford those things, and that we aren't facing significant energy crisis on top of all of the other challenges that we are facing. And I think the one last thing that I would really put out there to the city council, especially given the conversation tonight, is that part of why we come to the city and county and request funding each year is, one, our rebate program, it has no income requirements with it. And that means we typically can't go to grant funders to fund that program. We have to pull those funds out of C4's general fund. So the dollars contributed from our community to our work. So the city, the county, and private donations. Most grant funders won't fund pass-through funds unless there is an income component linked to it. And so that's really why we come to you all to fund rebates. And then the other piece is that this really allows us to say that we have a true partnership with our local government. And right now, especially in the climate space, that's the number one question we get asked from funders. How are you working with your local government? And this allows us to answer that question and say, we have a strong partnership. They're helping to support this work in our community, even though our community, maybe doesn't have the same economic conditions as some of our neighbors. This is still important to our city government, and they are a strong partner. And I will say, the city did sign on as for a letter of support for C4 and one of our partners, Energy Smart Colorado. They're based out of Summit, and they help us with our rebates and our audits. And they recently, as part of that grant application we supported, they were recently awarded $2 million in federal funding. And there's a really strong likelihood that a significant portion of those funds will come back to Lake County and help with all of the things that we just talked about. And so it really, we've seen that having direct city and county support for our organization and for our partners does come back to us in leaps and bounds. I think that's my response to some of the conversation earlier, but I'm also happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Emily? You did say you'd ask for funds from the county. What was your ask of the county?
Right now, when you add together the various ways in which the county is funding C4 next year, I believe we will receive just over $350,000.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I will throw out there, I know our request of both the city and the county has grown over the last few years. But C4's budget has grown from just under $200,000 in 2019 to we're looking at $1.3 million for this year. And we've grown, we're now at 4 full-time staff. We're likely looking at 8 full-time staff next year. A portion of these funds would help us add an energy program director who we're really hoping can help our organization and our community go after a lot of the climate funding that is coming down, that is becoming available. And we did, this is a side note, we're not asking the city to help fund this, but we did apply for DOLA funding with the county, and they awarded funding for a Lake County climate action plan that will happen in 2024 that we will come to the city to participate in actively. But I know the county every year has seen their investment in C4 return to them almost 10 times over. And that's something that we're always happy to do with the city as well. So hearing you talk about the delayed maintenance issues in your own building, as we grow, that means we have more capacity to also support you to help address some of those issues. It can seem a little roundabout sometimes, but quite honestly and frankly, I would strongly recommend that the city look at like energy efficiency funding to help address some of the issues that you're having, because it can fix both the old equipment issue and make improvements at the same time.
Thank you, Emily. Any other questions for Emily? I just think it's remarkable how far you've taken C4 since 2019. It really is something to behold, and you're doing things that, when you first started, I thought, okay, it's just recycling, and it's not that anymore. So thank you.
Of course, thank you so much. And I would put out there, if there's a better time to revisit this conversation with the city council in 2024, we're happy to do it with whatever timing works best for you all. I wish you all luck with the hard decisions that you have to make in the coming weeks. But I hope you'll consider C4, and I hope that you all have seen the impact that we've had in the community, and that we hope will continue to support us as we continue to do that work.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thanks for the presentation. Okay, next up, Reed McCollum.
Excellent. Thank you all for a long evening and squeezing in time to hear from me. I did submit a slideshow. I don't know if that's something that you all can view or if it's in your packet.
No, I haven't seen it. It's not in the packet.
Okay, that's unfortunate. It was requested I submit that, and I did email it in. Well, let me just do my best to convey to you what I wanted to share with you with some visuals. Is it possible to share my screen, and would you be able to see that?
Yeah.
Great.
She's giving you permission to share.
Yeah, anybody can.
Okay, then can you?
Yes, we can see.
Great. Let me just, if there's a way to make this, well, it's good enough. Well, what I'm here to share with you is just some of the programs and services that we've been offering in Lake County to help to understand some of the funding needs that we have. So our home buyer readiness services, our Promotora program, and then of course the Rail Yard project that's forthcoming. You've probably seen around town, or I hope you have, some of our flyers in both Spanish and in English, looking for people to participate in some of our classes that are offered monthly, and or if not every other month, and also our efforts to bring in a Promotora, which I'll explain in a minute, to help us provide services to folks in Lake County. The homebuyer readiness services, this is a large part of what we do, and this is the hand-holding that we do one-on-one with potential home buyers from that first phone call that they give us all the way through to the closing table. We provide these in both English and in Spanish. So we currently have 4 staff, including our Vista volunteer. Everyone on staff is a Spanish speaker. I'm the only one that's a non-native Spanish speaker. But we really prioritize having the capacity to meet everybody where they're at and explain things in a way that they can understand step by step through the process to become a homeowner. And if you own a home, you know that's an arduous process. And what we found is a lot of low-income families really don't have sort of that family knowledge of how mortgages work or how to go about becoming a homeowner. And so we provide all the services they need to get them to actually becoming a homeowner. One of the things we realized is that in Lake County, with over a third of residents being Hispanic or Spanish-speaking, Latinx, however we want to phrase that, that we find locals who are bilingual, bicultural, to help us connect with folks and break down any additional barriers that may exist for Latinos in Lake County. We've hired so far 2 promotores and have been paying them wages as part-time staff. We're currently looking to fill that position again. And so if you know of anybody who might be a good fit for that, we certainly would love to find yet another person to do that job. In the meantime, Claudia Polska, who provides all of our educational workshops, she works remotely from via Zoom and does all her work with clients one-on-one at whatever times they need. And she also provides classes. To that note, we have classes this week in Spanish, the Preparación para ser propietario de vivienda, meaning preparing for home ownership. That's on Thursday at 5 p.m. And the English version is the following Tuesday, also at 5 p.m. We've also participated in a number of community events, including the housing fair recently, where it looks like we got a handful of new clients. So all these efforts we found to be essential to be on the ground and really working to find potential home buyers, because a lot of people don't believe that they could become a homeowner. Looking at the contact points and the numbers, you can see from this chart that this is as of beginning or the end of October. Initial inquiries are one thing, but actually getting people to go through the application process, fix their credit, and then going through to mortgage application and successfully getting mortgage approval is a long and slow process. So currently we have 2 folks, I think there's a third on the way to having their mortgage approved and looking to buy a unit in the rail yard. And you can see from the numbers there, some of the touch points on who we're serving and how we're serving them, specific to Lake County. This do not include any of the Chaffey County activity. For general operations, this is probably the biggest bane or challenge for every nonprofit out there, is that we can get funds for projects, we can get funds for a number of different things, but getting funds for general operations is extremely challenging. These are some of the numbers from the last 3 years of the funding support that we've received from Lake County, and greatly appreciated, including the gift last year from the city. And I believe that was a 2022 gift for the very reasons that you spoke of earlier. There were funds available. But those are the totality of funds that we've received and spent in Lake County. A rail yard project, which is still forthcoming, but underway. Believe it or not, it wasn't until just last week that the state approved our grant and the bank approved finally our loan. So we are fully funded and getting to work. The factory is receiving the first steel shipment tomorrow, and they're going to be getting to work on assemblies, floor assemblies in the factory. The delivery is scheduled for currently sometime in April, and then we will have them set on foundations up in the rail yard and spend the summer getting them sided and roofed and all the other parts of development that we need to do to get that completed. The image that you're looking at here is just one of 2 buildings. There's 3 units downstairs and 3 units upstairs, including an ADA compliance unit and a hearing and audio and visual impairment unit to make sure that we serve everybody and get them what they need. All the ground floor units are ADA adaptable, meaning that if someone were to move in, the door widths and hallway widths already comply with wheelchair access specifications. Specific to the rail yard project, you can see here the funds that we've raised so far, including that $600,000 from the Division of Housing last week. The $300,000 is homebuyer assistance, kind of like down payment assistance that comes at closing, and that's already been obtained. Please note the CHT investment to date. So these are funds that we have put into the project to keep it going because of the delays in getting not only loan approval, but the funding from the state. We're hoping that both of these processes will be faster in the future, but we've had to put up $500,000 of our own money to get to the point where we are ready to start construction any day now, literally. So the total funding to date about 1.5 million, and then our financing 2.9 million. All told, this is about a $5.6 million project. Our request for funding from the city of Leadville is to match the DOLA and DOH annual CHOTO funding request. So they want to make sure that the municipalities and the counties that we're serving also have skin in the game to match the funds that they put towards general operations. So that $40,000 grant has been approved. We've requested 25,000 from Chaffey County. And then the city of Salida and the town of Buena Vista have their funding applications go through the community foundations. So those processes will be happening early in 2024. And then we've also requested a $10,000 match from Lake County. And then you can see our request from the city of Leadville for an additional $10,000 match. If you look at the total cost, I mean, our general operating budget next year is going to be over $400,000. That's just for staff, the homebuyer readiness services, the Promotora program, everything external to actual development. And that's, as I said, one of the hardest things for us to raise funds for. So we greatly appreciate any show of support that the city can provide, and certainly would love to ask for more, but hearing all the great presentations this evening, I know that there's a lot of need out there and a lot of great programs. And we're hoping that we also are bringing value, significant value to Leadville and to Lake County with the project that we're working on and the services that we provide. So with that, I'd be happy to take any questions and keep it this short for you so that you can finish your long meeting.
This is not long.
Now, any questions for Reed at this point? I have a couple. Obviously, I know your challenge, we've been talking about this for many years, is getting people qualified to buy the homes that you're able to provide. And you have a lot of clever ways of getting them in that home at the right price. But it sounds like you're up to maybe 3 potential people for these 12 units. How confident are you that you'll have 12 buyers by next fall?
Good question. You know, one of the things that we've learned is that when a project is announced and put out there, people show mild interest. And then when they see us break ground, suddenly there's a rush of applications. And so knowing that that's probably the case here with the rail yard, especially with some of the delays that we've incurred, we're poising ourselves to have a significant marketing campaign starting in January. We wanted to hold off till after the holidays, given all the competition with other needs and messages that are getting out there. So we're working, been speaking with O'Rourke Media Group about running regular ads in Leadville Herald, radio stations that will hit people who are traveling down to I-70 corridor, including Spanish ads, and then just Facebook presence and all the other things that we can do to really make people aware of what's available and the prices that those are available at. All these units are going to be for 100% AMI and below, so we have a larger audience or pool of potential buyers, and so we're really hoping that we can get folks in. As you can imagine, one of the biggest challenges right now are mortgages, and people have the perception that they cannot buy a home because they cannot afford 7 1/4 is what High Country Bank is currently charging for a typical mortgage. And you know, the prices or interest rates are higher with other entities out there. The USDA 502 direct loan program that we work directly with, they are at 4.5% currently. So it still works for people at that interest rate, and they can do 33 or even 38-year terms. So really making it feasible for people to get into a mortgage and be able to own a home. You know, other than that marketing effort and, you know, doing everything we can to let renters know that they can become home buyers. You know, any help that we can get from our partners like Build Generation or Full Circle of Lake County, it's always appreciated, including any ways that the city can help us advertise this availability. So if you would, or anybody on staff would be willing to help us in January, we really want to start pushing hard to get word out about this project and the services that we provide.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Reed? It's amazing, you know, I'm sorry you got delayed a year because of the availability of the building itself, but it sounds like you're on track this year. I'm very pleased.
Super excited.
Well, you can't imagine how excited I am because it is years in coming here, and COVID really, you know, gave us way too many curveballs. But Mayor Lobby, I just want to thank you for your tireless efforts on housing and in trying to get the ball across the goal line there. I know you were hoping to have some projects underway, if not completed by the end of your tenure.
Oh, heck
I-
yeah. No,
I pledge to you that we will be inviting you to that opening once we get there because of all your efforts. And Mayor Green, I do look forward to working with you and would happy to meet with you anytime if you'd like to discuss our efforts, or anybody on city council for that matter.
Thank you very much, Reed. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all. Appreciate your time as well.
All right. Do you guys want to take a quick break and then maybe have a brief conversation about where we're going with these thoughts? Mainly give me some direction to be ready for you by next Tuesday.
I'm good to go, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Let me say this. At first, I was thinking, we're just gonna send all these people to the community fund, but then I think, no, we're not. No, we're not. I'm a softie, you know.
I suppose to some extent, they're already using the community fund.
Yeah, I mean, I
Just
guess
like you
that
said, Christian.
there's options and then we need a better system, but for this year, we have this
Yeah.
system.
So,
And so, as I said before, we wanted to think about the contingency fund. I brought it up before to think about, maximizing 2023 and then not killing 2024's budget. And so we have, you've written them down, Mayor. So we have the Child Care Coalition at 50,000, C4 at 20,000, JV Housing Trust at 10,000. Main Street and the Lake County Community Fund are already in the budget. So, I think it's possible that we could put those requests those three requests we just heard in the we can use them 2023 money for those.
Yeah, we have
Including
45 in
The
economic
yeah,
development.
so, right.
And then we have
And then-
63 in contingency.
Well, yes, we actually do.
So
I
instead,
was gonna use some of that contingency for the city party and
But we
you
can't.
always get safety cards, but I can take those from other places in the budget. So let me make a suggestion, okay? Is that to Christian's point, and I accept that point, that maybe the 45,000, which we haven't used, we could give that to the Child Care Coalition, 2023 money, and leave it at that, 45. Okay, here you go. I mean, you requested 50, but here's 45. That we do the 50,000 to the Lake County Community Fund.
Wait.
And then,
No,
I think
time
we're-
out.
I think
We didn't agree to that.
I know, I'm just throwing out ideas.
Yeah.
I'm just, using.
So in addition to the 80,000 that you outlined, you also want to earmark additional money for the community fund.
I
Is that
don't
what I just?
No, not at all.
we can afford that.
No, wait, stop.
Okay.
We're not talking about, we're not to 2024 money. We're still talking 2023 money.
Okay.
The $45,000 is 2023 money, Child Care Coalition.
Yeah.
The
We're with you.
the $63,000 is still 2023 money.
Correct.
Still with you.
So, and I still have some movement to take place. So,
so why don't we take the 20,000 for C4 out of that contingency,
Okay,
the 10,000 for Housing Trust out of that contingency, that's
Okay.
30,000. And then 20,000 to the community fund,
From the contingency.
and that's your 50,000.
So we still all talking 2023 money?
2023.
Because
We're
we
still
have with
Right.
the economic development money and with the residual in our operating contingency, we have roughly 108,000. We have those three entities, C4, Favorite Housing, and childcare. Their combined request is 80. So that gives us, then you mentioned like 20,000 for Lake County Community Fund from 2023 money. That would leave us 8,000 in our operating contingency.
yeah, which we probably don't need.
Well, no, you said you were gonna spend some of that on, end of year holiday party.
That's true, but I have some other buckets I can look at. I mean, I have to play with this budget. Yeah, I just should.
No, but yeah, you're not playing with 2023 anymore,
No, I'm still, oh, yes, you're right, with 2020, no, I'm still playing with 2023. I'm talking about, there is money that hasn't been spent in 2023.
Right.
Some of them are small, like you could look at, a city supplies. And look at, that we spent 5,000 or 5,300 out of $8,000, okay? There's room to move, so I'm just saying, that's part of making this work. Now, let me give you some idea of how I close that $70,000 gap. We have currently, and these are just ideas, but they're ideas that I've
Could you identify
considered.
what the $70,000 gap is? Because it
Because for 2024.
Yeah, for 20.
got, okay, thank you,
2024,
yes.
that's a gap.
The
That
gap
in
is
the
that
front.
Titanic
Irrespective of
document.
what we're talking about using 2023.
We're still
The other
$60.
possibility is we fulfill all of these and I still get this budget to make and I miss it by $30,000. And then we do a $30,000 line item from the reserve.
Last year.
It's a very
Of
small
year.
hit, a very small
we
hit.
Finally.
I'm just trying to think through what we're doing here and how we're
Yeah.
fulfilling, first of all, fulfilling all the asks we've heard tonight,
Yes.
which I think are all so relevant. They just are,
Well, I was right there with you, Councilmember Hill, with your math and what you proposed. I think that is the only way we're gonna be able to fund these requests.
Well, then I'm gonna suggest, using the direction you were going, is that we would say, $45,000 for the Child Care Coalition, 20,000 for C4, 10,000 for Chafee Housing Trust. That would still leave us $33,000, so let's do $30,000 for Lake County Community Fund. They originally had requested 20.
Or what about go ahead and give the full 50
Yeah, I agree.
to the
Let's do
childcare
that.
and then 25 to the community fund?
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So 45 comes out of that economic earmark. It's all
And another,
in the contingency, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
okay, I can
Yeah,
live with
And
that.
that closes out
Fully
2023.
funded
Okay, I like that. I like that.
Can we give the money to the Lake County Community Fund?
But
with
I
some-
do, oh, sorry.
It's all right.
he's gonna thought.
With some parameters, because I think city council has priorities and it's still unclear to me exactly what the priorities are of the LCCSF, other than low hanging fruit, whatever that means.
Well, we very purposely didn't do that. I mean, I'm not saying we couldn't do it. I'm saying, I don't know if we should, they're a fabulous organization. They take their grant money and they pool it all. And then people come to them and ask for grants. And their priorities are the same priorities that our community has. I don't know if we get into directing their priorities.
I don't want to do it individually, but by category, right? It's city money, city dollars. It should support the city in some way, whether it's you could have an economic development pot, and we all know that can be defined in a lot of different ways. I'm not saying it has to go to this organization or that organization, but just categories.
I'm not sure what they do that doesn't benefit the city. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying, I'm trying to think, how would we do that? In what way could you objectively feel satisfied that they're doing what you'd like for them to do?
Well, it'd be good, I think, for us to all agree what we think the city's priorities are. Childcare, housing, economic development. Are there others on the list? Is it economic development countywide, or is it just within city limits for the money that we're giving to LCCF?
Well, so, I mean, first of all, we're doing childcare and housing are big parts of this budget already.
Right.
So let's say that Get Outdoors does a budget request, or Project Dream, or things like that. I don't know that I'd want to too closely define what our priorities are versus what the community need is. I just don't know how to get at that.
I think when you donate money to an organization and you have, you're deferring to them, and if you don't believe in the purpose or you don't like what they spent the money on, organizations do it all the time. They give money and then they find out that the money has gone to something they don't agree with, they don't give anymore. I think it's hard, I think I'm trying to think about how we would even manage making sure our money was spent on the priorities we have, and I don't have the bandwidth, or the staff doesn't have the bandwidth to monitor how that money could be spent. So, I don't know, it seems to be a tall order.
I just think in the future, using the community fund as a way to vet
Right.
who needs money, who doesn't, what's more important, what isn't. That is what they do.
Which is why we turned it over to them in the first place.
Exactly. Like, we don't have the time or the resource to vet.
Yeah.
Every
Well, we're learning
request.
that tonight.
Well, and I think
You
that's
know what?
part of the reason I keep saying we need a better system is the other city I worked for, they had like community contributions, and they did it once a year. And they created a subcommittee of city council and, you know, someone else on staff, so a staff person and city council members, and they said, okay, here's the application, here's the deadline, y'all have to apply, and so yes, if you wanted money for the fireworks in the summer, you needed to come then. If you wanted money for the play, you needed to come then. And that's how they figured out how to do it fairly, is they said, this is your time, this is your deadline, get your request in. And then the subcommittee sat and did the vetting. And they said, okay, here's priorities and here's this. And it still took 2 city council meetings. It was heart-wrenching, like, oh, we only have this much money. We only have $30,000. And if we give money to the animals, you know, organization, then we don't have money for, you know, the swimming organization. And it was heart-wrenching. And so it took them forever. And so that was the vetting that, you know, Lake County Community Fund sort of does, the whole application process and the deadline and all that. And so I think, to be honest, it was a fairer way because they advertised it and everybody came in at once and city council could see, here's our pot of money. What do we want to do with it? Come now. But it was really hard decisions.
What would you think, because I mean, like you pointed out, Christian, there's a lot of our requests this year have suddenly just like really blown up in terms of amounts. It used to be we had $9,000 and groups would come and ask us and we'd kind of max that out. Now, all of a sudden, like $9,000 is a really small ask for a single group. But what would you think? Because it seems to me that especially some of these larger organizations like C4, like we hope the childcare organization will be, has so much benefit for city and county, and they do get money from the Lake County Community Fund, but they also get money from county. It seems to me like some of those larger organizations that sort of balance all of their money asks, they get their grants, they get Lake County Community Fund, and they get money from city and county, like those might be appropriate to still leave in a, you know, like, hey, we asked the county for 20 and we're asking you for 20, or a county 20, you for 10. Like, that seems an appropriate thing to keep within our budgetary considerations.
You know, you make a very good point. And actually, to Emily's point, I thought it was very well taken. She said, why am I asking you for $20,000? Because I need to show that I'm getting buy-in from my community. Obviously, they're getting buy-in from the county and have for many years, and we've been a very small part of C4. But that resonated with me. I get that in terms of funding. Also, the fact that they have some funding that if they get a certain grant funding, that can't be used in the same ways. And so that was interesting as well.
And that is one of the issues when I worked at Full Circle that I saw with the community fund is, for example, we could not apply for some of the funding because it's just such a small amount that we'd receive in turn for how much we would pay a grant writer. It literally would not make it worthwhile for us to apply for some of these grants. So even if we were to give a certain amount, it wouldn't work out. And it worked out much better for much smaller organizations such as Líderes Latinx that has no income base, and we don't have a grant writer. It's all volunteer based. So that's kind of where I was also coming from the idea of I don't know that we can fully, but I agree that we need a system. I like the idea of a subcommittee. I brought that earlier to council, and I think it's a really good way to be able to not have it take up city council time. while being able to have city council members come to that decision who, you know, feel like it's a really important part of why they're on city council, such as myself. You know, that's a really important part as to why I'm here, is to help direct some of those fundings towards some of these organizations. And I would love to volunteer for a position like that.
I think I'm just gonna say, you as a new council, starting, you know, January the 9th is when the official date is of taking office. That's something you need to consider early on in the year. So just, do you want to have a subcommittee to deal with these things, and to what degree do you want to deal with them? I don't know the answer to that. We for many years kind of dodged that bullet, you know,
Yeah, I mean-
and now it appears to be inevitable. We're gonna have to deal with both, you know, the Lake County Community Fund being a great resource for our community, which it clearly is, and dealing with some asks ourselves.
And I think we can stay the course as long as it doesn't become untenable. If it becomes to the point where we don't have any money, or by the end of the year, we don't have money for good asks, that the whole point in doing it at the beginning is you plan. And so, you know, if somebody comes at the end of the year and we're completely out of contingency money, then, and they have an amazing ask, then, you know, it's a very sad decision, but I think there's some ideas we can work on for next year.
Okay, so I've written down the numbers that we've discussed. We haven't made any decisions, but I will present to you next week a budget. And it may or may not have these numbers in it.
I still haven't given up on the idea of a full-time grant writer in 24. I think we're missing a huge opportunity.
There's no place in the budget to put it. I don't know how else to put it. That's as blunt as I can be. I've pushed this budget and pushed it and pushed it. If there's and I don't know that you would be able to use a full-time grant writer in the first year anyway. I just don't know. Unless you got somebody who was enormously, had great networking and was very experienced, and I don't know who that is. I think you almost have to rely on a contractual obligation in a case like that. Now, having grant administration, that is what we probably need more. Because as we know, the Lake County Community Fund, Katie Sambrosio, they chase grants, you know, if they don't administer it. Some of those are federal grants, that's a problem.
I think that conversation needs to continue, because, you know, like I would say regarding the discretionary funds that our Congress people and our senators have, you know, like Senator Hickenlooper called me and he mentioned that, and he's like, hey, hit me up. And yeah, I was like, okay. Yeah, but having somebody who's familiar with those kind of requests, and you know, like I've written one grant my entire life and it was super traumatic.
Well, so I think I agree. I agree with you. It probably can be full-time. I don't think it's gonna be full-time in 2024, just also because I think there are a lot of grants, same thing as Full Circle Fund. There's a lot of grants we can apply for, but the administration is so burdensome that it may not be worth it. Like, for example, the opposite of that is Tabor Opera House, right? So those are huge grants that can, you know, move that project forward. I think we can probably figure out a way we can maximize some of the grants that would work for us, because there are some grants. There's website grants, there's grants for, you know, historic renovation, there's grants for equipment, transportation, but I think
if this next year, if we identify some of those grants, maybe doing a contractual writer for specific things that we think would be a good fit that don't have, you know, obnoxious administration and recording requirements.
Yeah, we're lucky at the Tabor Opera House. Technically, those are our grants, and we're supposed to administer them, but Sarah's very good at it. She administers them for us. And we just sign the dotted line. So we've been very fortunate there.
And I was kind of wondering with this, like $10,000 to the community funds, grant writers, like if we got a process started, you know, like could they polish it? Like, so we wouldn't necessarily be fully reliant on them, because 10,000 doesn't seem like they were very much of their
a
time.
very common system is cities contract out for services initially until they can stand it up themselves.
Yeah.
So I think Like anything else, we can contract it out in the beginning, kind of get it set up and get it going. And then as soon as we find, like anything else, we're paying too much in contracting to make it work and we can bring it in-house, bring it in-house. And it also depends, like in our community, finding the right people, right? So if we found someone who could hit a lot of these buttons, maybe we bring the person in. Our community is different than Denver. You wouldn't do it that way there because there's a lot of people to choose from in the pool.
Right.
But for here, we may do it that way because the opportunity presents itself.
You know-
Any grant you apply for should have an item of administrative.
Usually 5% is administrative, 10%? Oh,
5 or 10%.
It depends grant to grant really, but, I guess, you know. What I thought was, well, you know, we have, what, 7, 8 police officers budgeted. We're not gonna hire 7 or 8 police officers next year. And that's kind of the same
Good
thought
point.
process that I had of. Are we gonna hire a full-time grant person right off the bat and are we gonna pay them $60,000? Probably not. It's not realistic that we would hire someone in January for that budget. And for this year, I mean, clearly since we're 70K down, it doesn't really make too much sense to do, but going forward, I don't think that it should stop us from including that in our goals. Because if we're gonna be including 7 or 8 police officers, despite how unrealistic that is then we should also shy away from. Or, you know, we should start limiting how much we are actually committed to the police department, one or the other, you know?
Yeah, and the bottom line is we don't do, you know, our budget is not line item. By the end of the year, we don't do a supplemental budget based upon line items.
Right.
We don't do a supplemental budget based upon departments. So, you know, that's why I say overall, if we, yes, we have in there probably an optimistic hire for the police department. Should it happen, that'd be fantastic. But if it happens, it doesn't happen, and we use that salary money, and because we found somebody who can do more than $10,000 worth of work on grant writing, okay?
to your point, and so I was gonna get to that, one of the ways I'm gonna work on this budget is say, we have 4 police officers and we have funding for 4 more. That's what's in the budget. The chances of us hiring anybody right away is pretty slim. But let's say, we say 2 of those won't be hired until the 2nd quarter. And the other 2 won't be hired until the 3rd quarter. And then I change the budget based on that.
Yeah.
I think that's where I'm gonna get our $70,000. I don't know if I get all the $70,000 out of that, but I'm on the same wavelength, just a little different way.
That's some other ideas, there's.
There we go, all right. So that's a thought process around the reality versus, you know, what your wish list is on the table.
So, talking nuts and bolts. Is this gonna, these 2023 requests, are they gonna come to us in the next 2 meetings and?
Yep, so what I'll do is, I think, well, that's where we're headed. And so what I'd like to do is the same thing we've done before, is just do resolutions for those. Because otherwise, we're not tracking them.
But we'd have
I'm
to,
just saying, you got 2 meetings.
yeah, they have to bill us before the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. She keeps talking about the 12th.
No, God, we're not having any more meetings. No, that's sort of, yeah. We're not.
Yeah, so we're gonna need to make finalized decisions on the 5th. At that time, based on the finality of our decisions, we'll do resolutions on the 19th. Does that seem fair? Actually, you can do the resolution after the first year. Nobody cares. However, what we would do is notify these organizations, get us an invoice,
Okay.
okay? And that gives them,
We could do, I was trying to think, I mean. Oh, I'm gonna do something tricky. We may, we'll see.
you are fly.
Are we still gonna revisit short-term rentals before the end of the year? Didn't we all agree to do that? Short-term
Oh, my
rentals,
God.
the number?
Yeah, I think we need a work session.
Yeah,
on-
we also have. We also have an OHV moratorium.
Oh, yeah, we did.
When does that expire?
I don't know, but we were talked about extending that until the county figured out what they were.
I
gonna
agree,
do.
but I don't know when it expires.
Yeah, I can
It's supposed to be like,
So.
Not your problem.
Probably December 12th.
because they're having that town hall tonight.
Yeah, I
right
know that.
now,
Yeah.
so.
Kind of right
Yes,
on top of our
we
meeting.
did.
wanted to
I
do
have
that.
to tell you that our planning director has been completely buried with the rail yards issues. And so I know he had
I'm
said.
so
he wanted
sorry
to
about that.
Work on that and bring something back. And this is why additional staff help us. It's just not.
Can we just tack on a pain in the ass tax?
Go somewhere else. I thought we were gonna say, can we just clone Chapin? And I was. gonna
Well, I
say,
would love to do
That
that, but
actually is.
you know, I think we're still in the early stages of that technology.
PETA tax.
It is,
Yeah.
yes, we don't have fee, because tax you have to go to the voters.
A fee,
Yeah,
it's
a
a
fee.
fee, yes, we'll do a fee.
Well, I mean, in essence, to some extent, yes, because, the developer's going to pay some of our legal fees for all of this, but it's been a lot. I mean, you've seen the tip of the iceberg on the documentation and work necessary for this.
Can't, I don't even want to visualize.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the answer to your question is yes, we discussed that and yes, but I just don't think it's going to happen, so. I can talk to Chapin when he's back in, he's a little bit of weather.
You guys have been really helpful tonight. Seriously, gives me what I need to get this done. I feel really good about the conversations tonight, the presentations. I was headed a different direction in this whole thing and clearly I was unprepared for how good the presentations were going to be and how.
Compelling.
Oh, well.
It is.
Any other thoughts before we get out of here? Thank you.
Can we have another meeting where you like download like 2 more years of institutional knowledge? I understand talking to Brian, I have to learn something about the boiler, so I think you do need to show me.
You have to know where to give it a switch.
It is not that complicated.
Boiler?
I try and think